United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Lord in heaven, we come to you this evening. Father, we thank you as we pray for our town, Rolesville. Lord, I pray for us as leaders that you open our eyes and ears to help us to make the decisions that are appropriate and right for our fellow town residents. Lord God in heaven, I come to you and I pray with a heavy heart tonight, Lord, for our country, our nation, our residents, our police officers, Father God, and our leaders. Lord, I pray your protection over our police officers. Lord, we know that not all officers have evil rooted in them, Father God, but we pray in the name of Jesus for those that do, that it is rooted in something, Lord, that only you can do. I pray for our country. We're hurting, Lord. We're mourning because of the injustice that's been done, Father God, the inequality. Lord, I pray in the name of Jesus that you would take the blindfolds off of our hearts, Father God. Lord God, for those that don't see and understand what's happening, Lord, I pray that their eyes and ears of understanding are open. Lord, I pray that we can sit down at a table together and pray and agree to disagree, Father God. But Lord, we just want to be heard. And I pray in the name of Jesus that that's something that only you can do, Father. Lord, I pray for the family of George Floyd. I ask, Father, in the name of Jesus, that you comfort him. I pray, Father God, that all that is happening is not in vain, Lord God. I pray for his family and all the families before him, and unfortunately, Father God, any families to come after. I pray, Father God, that you just well up and just heal our land, Father God, because, Lord, that's something that can only come from you. I want to finally pray, Lord, for our leaders, for the leaders of every town and municipality, up to the leaders of our country, Father God. I pray, Lord, for leaders who are interested and seek out unity and justice, Lord. I pray against those who throw flames on a fire, Lord, because that's not what we need right now. Lord, as a nation, we need you. I pray for comfort for our nation. I pray for leadership for our nation. I pray for justice for our nation. Lord God, we thank you. And I ask this in the mighty, mighty, mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. We really need that. Thanks. Welcome to Town Clerk regular meeting of Rolesville, June 2nd, 2020. We do have public here for the first time in probably 12 weeks or so, so we're excited about getting somewhat back to some normalcy here. I think we're a long ways from being what I would say pre-COVID normal, but we are getting there. As you can see, we're kind of spaced out here in the chamber tonight, and we are limiting the number of people that can be here at one time. We do want to keep it as open as we can to the public, so we want to encourage the public to come out. We may not be able to get you seated inside the chamber, but we have other plans if we overflow. So I did want to say something before we start the meeting. First of all, I just hope everyone had a very restful, enjoyable Memorial Day weekend. Due to COVID, the observance of Memorial Day throughout our country was not celebrated as usual. The new community recognition of the banners for our veterans and also the military community is now hung on Grand Falls Boulevard. I want to invite everyone to go by and look at that this summer at some point in time. Appreciate Paul for kind of heading that up, and good job on that. As we pay tribute to our fallen heroes this last weekend, this weekend reminds us that our country has not reached the greatness that we are capable. I saw a few minutes of the horrible and stricken event that took place with the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. I could not stomach to watch the entire 8 minutes. Just a couple minutes that I watched was enough to convince me that this is just wrong. Minnesota has a long history of being a progressive state, which should indicate to all of us that it can happen there, it can happen here. I have confidence in the state of Minnesota will provide justice in the case of Mr. Floyd. It's a sad fact that we cannot do anything to bring him back. This event has sparked peaceful protests across our country. Unfortunately, some places the protest has turned to outrage and riots. As your mayor and part of the Fellowship of North Carolina Mayors, I signed a letter along with 70 other of my fellow mayors speaking about the injustice and the death of George Floyd. If you look at the map, these mayors were distributed across the whole state of North Carolina. It was very much the whole state. So, I would like you to take a look at that. And also, the letter is published in several places. It is on our website at Town Hall. So, if you get a chance, I invite you to go out and read North Carolina Mayor's statement on the murder of George Floyd. And it was penned. It was penned mostly by the mayor of Durham. Durham was one of the first cities that was influenced in North Carolina. So I think he started the penmanship of the letter. But like I said, 70 mayors signed on. I signed this letter with confidence that the Rolesville Town Board will support. Therefore, I didn't hesitate to add my name to the list of mayors. I've received several calls and questions the past couple of days on two regards. One question asked about the safety of public interactions with our police, and the other question was pertaining to our readiness in case of disturbance in Rolesville. On the website, I shared a letter that was provided by Rolesville Police Chief Orlando Soto. I would encourage you to go out there and read that if you haven't seen it yet. It was a very touching letter to explain, the view of the police department. This is nothing that they are proud of by any means. And if you get a chance, I would ask you to go out and read that. I would say I'm very proud of our police chief and department. We've had a couple of issues prior to Chief Orlando's team. Under Chief Orlando's leadership, he has improved our department and the service our police provide to our community. They're here to protect and serve you, the citizens of Rolesville. And I'm confident this can be accomplished in a safe environment. As many of you know, Rolesville receives several state towns awards, which are direct results from the relationship our law enforcement officers have with you, the citizens of Rolesville. I've always been a believer that good things can be gained from a bad situation. So let's take this time to strengthen our relationships and increase our understandings of each other. By coming together, Rolesville will be able to reach a true potential as a community. So I wanted, this is published on the Rolesville website, and I wanted to, just to convey it tonight to the board, so you guys can hear it from me also. I think if you go out and read Chief Orlando's letter, you kind of understand, that we all, feel, as April said in the prayer, that, it's a pretty unpleasant situation. So with that, we do have business to do tonight. So the first item is to review the agenda by the board. So is there any changes requested on the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as stated.
Okay, I got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
April seconds. Is there any additional discussion? Is there any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Me? It's not working? Okay. Okay. I'll see if Justy. That's better? Okay. So I think the first item is introduction of new employees. Are they here tonight, Kelly? Okay. So we have two new employees, and one's a new planner, and the other one is summer intern. So if you,
Announce the name of the first one, they'll come in.
okay, Julie Spriggs.
You have a little thing to read about her?
Yeah, you want me to do that?
Yes, you may.
All right. Julie is a new planner too for the Town of Rolesville Planning Department. She is certified North Carolina floodplain manager, North Carolina zoning official, and geographic information systems professional. She has over 20 years experience in local government and 15 years experience in North Carolina. Very, very nice.
Welcome.
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 Thank you
Welcome.
very much. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. And I just want to say that I'm really excited to be here with the town, and I look forward to all that we're going to do together.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Roland, do we get the mic? There we go. Okay, next.
Okay, our next is Veronica Wagner. We'd like to welcome her. She's a graduate student who is joining the town staff as summer intern. Ms. Wagner earned her bachelor's degree in history at Fayetteville State University in 2018. She then spent the next year serving as students in Tulsa, Oklahoma with this City Year and American Corps Partnership nonprofit. Currently, she is a second-year student pursuing a master's degree in public administration at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Welcome to Rolesville. Yeah.
Welcome.
Welcome,
Yeah.
Clarification, he said Veronica, my notes say Valencia?
Yes, it's Valencia.
Valencia. Okay.
Valencia.
Thank you.
Thank you for correcting that, Jeff.
Welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments, Manager? Good. Now we come to a time the public is invited to be heard. Was there any comments submitted?
There were none submitted.
None submitted through the emails, anything like that, but we do have two that would like to speak. Okay. I don't have their names, so you can bring them in.
Evening.
I don't need to know his name. Hey, Charles.
Hi, Charles.
Do you recognize me now?
I recognize you still.
Darn. This is,
If you would just give me your address.
okay, 100 Watkins Farm Road, Rolesville. First, I want to say that I stopped at the police station yesterday because I had some medication that I wanted to drop off the dump, and I asked to speak with the chief, and said it was in a meeting. I was going to ask him whether or not did he make a statement verbally or in writing about the incident with George Floyd. But anyway, so I didn't get to see him. But then when I got home this afternoon, I read the Rolesville Blast, and I was very, very pleased to see that. It really was. I enjoy reading that, by the way. I do read it every time I get it. So I just wanted to say that. I was very pleased to see that. I know I'm going to try and say that I had two items. I'm going to try and do it in my allotted time, but I'm going to ask for your indulgence if I go a little over. All right. Last year, matter of fact, in June, when we had those torrential rains, I was here and I was talking about the flood, etc. Now this Thursday we had a nice downpour. Wasn't anything compared to what we had, not even close. But I was looking out from my front window, and I just saw this water rushing down in my front yard. And my wife goes to great pains planting flowers and we put mulch down every year. And she plants flowers, and I just saw this mulch just run down, And I said, why is it? And I looked, and I saw a culvert, and that's on my neighbor's property, and it was like a faucet spitting up in the air. And I went over and I said, what the heck is this? And it was clogged up. There was so much dirt, weeds were growing up. So I got a shovel, and I went over there, and I was digging some of it out. My wife was she was livid. What are you doing out there? That's the town supposed to do it. We pay our taxes. They said they was going to do that, So but she's more excitable than I am. So I said, yes, honey. So I continued, and I dug 3 of them out that needed to be dug out. So, and, but I wanted to say, though, I think she was more upset about 4 weeks ago today, I had surgery to repair a hernia. And the surgeon gave me explicit directions: don't do anything strenuous, don't lift anything over 5 pounds. So I think she was more upset about that I was doing that. So anyway, like I said, I dug 3 of them out, but I'm hoping, and you guys the town did send somebody out last year, and the guys came looking, and they made the same assessment that the culverts need to be corrected. But at the very least, I would ask if at least somebody can just come out and like I said, I didn't go down the whole block, but like I said, to look at them and see if some of them are plugged up, at the very least, dig them out so that the water can flow better than it's flowing now. The other thing is that I noticed that on my side of my yard and in the front of my house there, some of the orange paint marks that, not excavators, but what are the guys called with
The internet guys,
Yes,
the
yes.
team people, yeah.
And so I'm assuming they're going to do some excavating. So I happened to talk to one of the guys. He said they're working on a waste sewer for, I guess, the development right behind where Watkins Farm. So I was thinking, I'm not an engineer, but I was thinking, if they're going to be doing that, you're going to have the manpower, you're going to have the equipment. Is it possible to tie in what they're doing with some of that sewer? I mean, if they're going to have those individuals there and the equipment, no sense reinventing the wheel. And so that's why I wanted to mention that to you guys, so that at least, if nothing else, you're aware of it. Okay? That's it. Now, did I go over my time?
You did a good job, Charles.
Huh?
You did a good job. So the water was not as bad as,
Oh, no, not even close, not even close.
The flood
But
from
since it was
last
in the front of the yard, because you can really see it, because where the water comes, where our house is on the corner, the water comes from 3 different directions. Comes east, south, and it goes west, so we're right in there, almost a perfect storm, so to speak. And I also went out and the sewer grates that are in the road, I went out with a shovel and I cleared up some of the debris, because that, you can't help that, debris is going to get caught in that. So I went and cleared off some of that also, and I don't mind doing that stuff, I really don't. I'm not going to go to every culvert in the neighborhood, though, although it's only about 26 houses, it's a small development, but. So
But your wife does mind you doing it.
Yeah, she would not, I wouldn't mention that to her. I'm just going down to visit someone, I'm not going, why do you have that shovel in your hand? So anyway, but thank you very much for your time, I appreciate it.
thanks,
Thank
Charles.
you.
All right, stay safe, all right?
You
You,
too.
sir. Thank you.
Oh, I have a question.
Mhm.
Can I ask now?
Yeah.
Okay, so since that was identified a year ago, is that something that, what is the process to have that taken care of? Is that normal for all neighborhoods, or how does that work?
So, I don't know specifically where he's talking about, and so I'd have to assess that and make sure I understand more. We have gone out and cleaned some of the known ones, like for instance, this storm, we saw a lot less resistance in some areas. For instance, the one on Virginia Drive on Redford Place in the Virginia Way was flooded out last year, and we had gone and cleaned out that whole cover and it flowed much better. So I need to find out where this is a little bit to assess whether it was something we should have had regularly maintained or not.
Is that just cleaning it out, or is there,
That's a good question. I don't know the answer.
April, if I can expand on that subdivision at Watkins Farm, just like Wall Creek where I live, we didn't have stormwater retention rules in place when those subdivisions were built. And you've got culverts in both places that are undersized, and they're going to have to be addressed.
They typically get overwhelmed pretty quickly.
Yes.
Gotcha,
Yes.
okay.
And so just one more kind of quick, if I might take an opportunity. So what we're trying to do now is we have mapping going on of all our stormwater systems in place. And from that, we just got year 1 done. We have about 2 more years, 3 more years of mapping. And then from that, we're going to develop a stormwater plan, and we'll have that conversation. How are we going to maintain this system?
Gotcha.
We don't have a maintenance plan per se right now. So
Okay.
and quite frankly, we don't know what we own and don't do own. And so that's the purpose of mapping first.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, but we're not going to wait to look into what he
No,
brought up tonight.
I'll find
To
out.
that plan.
That's fine.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, we got a new visitor. So just give us your name and address if you don't mind.
My name is Gail Stallings, and my address is 1512 Rolesville Road, Wake Forest. And I'm here really just to, I guess, I'll let you guys know. I'm here because of number 7 on your consent agenda. And there were many more people that would have been here from my community. I would say it wouldn't surprise me that we would have had 50, 75, or even 100 people, because there are a lot of people that are actually affected by this particular proposed development. And, you know, I think right now is really not a very good time for us to be having these types of meetings. We've got the curfews, we have Corona, and so many of my neighbors would not come tonight because of Corona. So, you know, I really would like for you guys to kind of reconsider. I mean, I know we all want life to go on as normal, but it's not normal now. And this is really something that is very important to us as a community, and we are greatly going to be affected by this. And when my neighbors and my friends in the community cannot come in person and attend, you know, I don't think it's fair. I really think that you guys need to reconsider, you know, some of these meetings. And so that's, you know, really how I feel about that, and a lot of my neighbors feel the same way too. And then the other thing too is, one of my neighbors called and spoke to the planner and actually questioned about number 7 on the agenda, but was told there would be no discussion or dialogue, you know, that we as a community could speak about that tonight. So if you guys could please, you know, help explain that, you know, we would appreciate this annexation process, because this is very important to all of us.
The way I understand it, on the consent agenda, we are only directing the town clerk to investigate the sufficiency of this voluntary annexation. But before it's annexed in, we would have a public hearing, correct? And at that time, you would be able to speak. So this action tonight doesn't, all it does is authorize the town clerk to investigate.
Okay. All right, I understand.
And you will be notified of the public hearing.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
And if I may add one last piece, you will set the public hearing. So when we come back with the sufficiency and say it's sufficient, that'll be the opportunity to consider her request of whether you win and where you might, or if not, set the public hearing. So this gets the action going, but there has not been a public hearing set.
Right.
And they will set that, and they'll have that conversation, and we'll be on the agenda when it's time for that conversation.
Yeah. So just, I think you make a good point, Gail, about a fair due process of having everybody that wants to speak on something to be able to speak on it.
Right.
And we do recognize that. In fact, we got 2 public hearings tonight, and we have told both applicants that if it's too many people to safely do it tonight, that we will postpone it to where everybody can participate that wants to participate. So, you know, wherever in the future, if there is ever a public hearing on what you're talking about, you know, we will provide a way that everybody, you know, how many did you say, 50 or so?
I mean, there are a lot of people
Yeah.
that are really, really interested in this. It's not just a handful this time, not this go-around. There's a lot more people that are being a lot more vocal.
So we would have to figure out how to way to provide for that when time comes.
Well, we would appreciate that, because, you know, we would really appreciate, you know, being treated as fairly as the developer and the property owners as well. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you allowing me to voice my opinion.
Thank you, Gail.
All right, thank you.
Gail, I just want to say to you also, if you ever reach out to any staff member in Rolesville and you don't get a sufficient answer or an answer that you fully understand, please reach out to Kelly Arnold
Okay,
to get some further details, or one of us.
Okay.
And we'll assist you in that, because I never want you to feel like I don't,
Right.
yeah.
okay. Well, I appreciate that.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Thank you so
Mhm.
much.
Thank you. You stay safe.
Thank you, Gail. Okay. Was that it, Robin? Okay. So that brings us to the consent agenda. There's 8 items that we see on the consent agenda. Naturally, any commissioner has the right or ability to pull any one out for discussion if we want to vote on it separately, or we can approve the consent agenda as presented. So, do I hear a motion or?
Actually, I do want to get a little bit of clarity on number 7 myself.
Okay. David, explain what is being asked here. I think my understanding, a property owner can ask to be annexed, and we have have to follow up and do some things to investigate whether we can do that or not. Is that where we're at with this, or what is the process?
That's exactly right, Mr. Mayor. The North Carolina general statutes limit the rights of towns to annex additional territory. In the case of a voluntary annexation or annexation by petition, that process starts with the property owner requesting that their property be considered for annexation. Given the restrictions on towns' territory that they're even allowed to take, the statute sets forth that the very first step is for the board to ask the town clerk to determine whether, even if the town wished to acquire the property, whether the town is authorized to do so. If not, the process stops right then when the clerk reports back. If the clerk reports back that the property is eligible for annexation, the board then, in its judgment, can set a public hearing to consider whether to annex, then conduct that public hearing, and then exercise its legislative authority again and decide whether to vote yes or no. So a number of decision forks yet to come.
Okay, so I have a question in regards to the order in which things are done. Referring to last night's meeting and the question that was proposed today, it seems like one comes before the other one should actually happen. Does that make sense?
It can seem that way. To bring everyone up to speed, last night was our regular planning board meeting, and the staff had, as a matter on the agenda for the planning board's consideration, a proposed text change to the R3 zoning district that would allow for the R3 zoning district to have single-family detached housing. Currently, our ordinance is written in such a way as to only allow townhomes and multifamily homes in the R3 zone. The impetus for that to be looked at by the staff was actually through this property owner and their attorney when they originally came to the town and were set to propose this property for development as a PUD. They were informed by the town that the town had adopted a policy discouraging PUD submissions and encouraging them to look to the ordinance for a conditional zoning opportunity. When the staff and the town attorney looked for other zoning districts where that could be submitted, we discovered that there was not such a place. That is, our R1 district, R2 district, and R3 district are our 3 residential zoning districts that are not quasi-judicial, but R3 does not permit single-family uses, which would therefore preclude a mixture of single-family and townhome together in a single development. So that was how it ended up for the discussion point for the planning board to think about whether that was a change to make. I can report that the board did recommend approval after lengthy discussion, and that is something that will come to this board in the future, but hasn't come to you yet.
No, so I'm just wondering so you have to seek to make sure it can be done first while this other group is seeking to get approval to build a certain type of home on the property. Because what if it came back, and I'm not saying this is the case because it hasn't been discussed, what if it comes back as a no? So what happens to all that time spent last night trying to get certain things moving forward?
The town staff recommended as a good idea for the town, not for this site.
Okay.
It is just that we were lucky to have someone who was interested enough to advocate for it.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would have just been the planning staff and the planning board.
Thank you.
Okay.
That answers your question, Michelle? Okay.
Motion to approve consent agenda?
I had one question on the GFL contract amendment for recycling, and I don't know if you want to address it now or move it down.
Let's get a second and we'll have questions. Yeah, I hear a second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion to approve and a second, and now any discussions or questions?
So on the GFL contract amendment for recycling, it says there'll be no impact to, or no increase to the town residents for next year, next fiscal year. Do we know about the preceding years or the forthcoming years?
If the rate would be able to, the current rate would probably be able to be maintained if both of our providers do not have any further increases. So I think it is, we do have the ability, we have to evaluate, and I don't want to be put on the record as a yes or no tonight, but we don't know that answer specifically. But we do have the capacity this year to be able to absorb it. I would think that we might be able to next year, but I don't know that for certain.
I just wanted to know if we knew, if we anticipated it or not versus, because we just talked about the 1 year. So
Right.
just wanted to clarify.
No.
If there was some additional detail. That's fine. I'm good. Thank you, Kaylee. Good.
Okay. So I do have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Everybody okay? Michelle? All right, I have a motion and a second. No more discussion, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I think it was unanimous, clerk. Okay, thank you. We can get to our items of business here. First item is public hearing, case SUP 1902, a master team mixed-use master plan. As a CO, SUD district, townhomes, commercial, townhomes detailed site plan. So requesting, I think this is a quasi judicial procedure. So attorney, you want to me open the procedure, or you want to make your statements first?
There may be a request from a board member first.
Yes, at this time, I respectfully recuse myself from this because of my relationship with this development team.
Okay, we have a motion or a request from a board member to recuse. Do we have any objection from any of the commissioners in that respect? Everybody good with that? Okay, Jackie, you are excused then.
All right, I guess you'll send somebody after me later.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I am allowed to go and watch it.
Put your mask
Okay.
on, Jackie. Got your mask? Where's your mask, Jackie? Is it in your pocket?
All right, Mr. Attorney, will you mind doing the introduction to this quasi-judicial procedure?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quasi-judicial hearings have characteristics similar to court proceedings. Quasi-judicial decisions must be based only on the evidence presented at the hearing and site visits by the board, if any. Witnesses must testify under oath or affirmation. The parties have the right to cross-examine the witnesses. There is a right to present rebuttal evidence. The evidence provided by witnesses must be competent and material. North Carolina General Statutes, Section 160A, 193, prohibits a person from giving opinions about scientific, technical, and other specialized subjects unless the person, by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, is in fact an expert on the subject. A person wanting to give an opinion as an expert must first state his or her qualifications to be an expert. North Carolina General Statute 160A 393 specifically prohibits opinions that the use of property in a particular way would affect the value of other properties, or opinions that the increase in vehicular traffic resulting from a proposed development would pose a danger to the public safety unless the witness is an expert on the subject. And with your consent, I am only going to read that statement once for both of our hearings. Hopefully that was good enough.
Okay.
Some questions to the board. This is a qualifying phase to ensure that every applicant for this case and every party in this case has received a fair trial by an impartial decision maker. Is any member here predisposed to vote in a particular way on this matter such that their opinion is fixed and the evidence presented during this hearing is not likely to influence their decision?
No.
Seeing no affirmatives. Has any board member here discussed this matter with either proponents or opponents or other outside of this hearing?
No.
No.
No. I was a little delayed. I'm sorry.
The record shows
No.
no. Is any member not able to make his or her decision on this matter solely based upon the evidence presented at this hearing?
No.
No.
And again, all were in the negative for the clerk. Madam Clerk, you can administer the oaths. If you want to do those as a group or individually. Do them as a group.
Anyone wishing to provide testimony in this public hearing, if you will, please stand. Raise your right hand. There is a Bible available, but it is not a requirement. If you would, repeat after me. I'm sorry. If you would follow what I say with a yes or no. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Clerk and Attorney. Was everybody able to be seated that want to be seated here? So we do have everybody in the chambers. Great, appreciate that. Okay, well, I'll open the public hearing here. First item is evidence from the staff. So staff, do you want to do that, Danny?
Thanks, sir. As you've already introduced, this is a public hearing case posed on judicial for special use permit 1902, a mixed-use master plan located in a commercial outlying special use district. And they are also proposing in that mixed use for townhomes and commercial development. And they're also requesting approval of the townhome detailed site plan. It's on 5.99 acres in the corner of Rogers Road and Grand Rock Way. Oh, thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you. The current site is located on the future land use plan, is classified as commercial. And the current zoning I've already identified as the commercial outlying special use district. This is the location. Map on your left is the aerial photography. The wooded area you see here outlined in red is the site that they're asking for the master plan, and also with the two uses identified. This is Pine Glow. This is the Coffee Lodge, AutoZone, and the daycare and CVS, post office and shop center, and of course this is the Grand Ridge townhomes on both sides. All of this is that the district I already identified. You see in the color there. This is industrial. This is planned unit development for the two yellows here, as well as for the townhomes and the commercial site with the post office and all the other strip businesses on Rogers Road. Across the road is vacant. Of course, the site is vacant with woods.
And of course, there's the daycare and CVS. The application is for a special use permit for a mixed-use master plan as provided in section 8.3.12 for residential uses in the commercial outlying special use district, zoning district. Also included is a site plan approval for 47 townhomes on 5.99 acres, a portion of the 7.44 acres of the total site. 1.45 acres will remain for commercial for possible use as permitted by the Commercial Outline Special Use District. So this is basically their master plan. The red area here is identified as 1.45 acres for commercial. And the area here in yellow is the 5.99 acres identified for residential, specifically townhomes. They specifically request townhomes. And under that section, that's the first step, is identifying the two portions to which density and other requirements can be calculated. So as provided in that section of 8.312, the 5.99 acres proposed for residential use for townhomes will yield 59 residential units. Proposed is 47 townhomes within the 5.99 acres. Of course, therefore, there's a surplus of 12 units that they are not using. And as provided in that same section, 1.45 acre commercial site can be set aside or reserved for residential units on the second and third floors and up for multifamily dwelling units over the first floor. So that is what they're doing. They're preserving that 12 if a developer wishes to do it over the commercial and do multi-story building with residential above. It is an option. It is not a requirement. If they choose not to include the apartment units in the proposed commercial building, that will go away. But it's only for that commercial site. It's the only place it can go. All right. So this is Rogers Road. This is the commercial site, and it will remain vacant until a site plan comes in specifically for development of that property, and will be a process separate from the site plan you see here. This is the 47 townhomes with private streets with access to the existing stub or T adjoining. Also, this is accessing Grand Rock Way across from the opposite townhome private drive. The post office is right here. Daycare is right here. Pine Glow is there. And AutoZone is this location here. Plan shows access to all existing private drives that exist, the back of between CVS and the daycare, between AutoZone and the Coffee Lodge, that goes out to South Main Street. Under our landscape ordinance provisions, requires type A buffers between the commercial and the townhomes, a type B between the daycare and the townhomes, a type A reduced, the requested reduction, which is allowed in the ordinance, but it's still a opaque type A buffer between Pine Glow and development. So just to recap, what is this R? Just to quickly recap, it's an opaque screen, height up to 6 feet, planting of deciduous and evergreen trees, expected height no more than 20 feet, and have no obstructed openings wider than 10 feet between the tree canopy at maturity. That's a type A. So that's the area between the commercial and Pine Glow to the townhomes. Type B is a semi-opaque screen to a height of at least 3 feet. Canopy trees reach a height of at least 20 feet in maturity and have no obstruction openings greater than 20 feet between canopies, and at least 50% of the required shrubs must be evergreen species. So it's a little bit more open than the others, and it's because of the essence, the commercial daycare operation. And of course, there's a street front type D that's shown on the plan I didn't mention along Grand Walk Way, which is very spaced out trees, just to to provide some softening of the development, but it's still going to be fairly visible. It's not opaque. So I just want to go over that with you quickly. Now, also, in the lower corner, I know you can't read that, they are putting a note on here about the existing trees in this buffer area, and if they are of type and maturity and size and location, then they can be reserved and saved. They will include them. This site does have a combination predominantly of pine trees, large mature pines, and at this time, this section here, I don't think they're planning to clear that at this time. Now, they could if they wish to, because it's their right. But
Wait a
it's
minute, which
gonna-
section is that?
Excuse me?
Which section is that they're not looking to clear right now?
Well, they're not planning to develop the commercial yet. So that's it.
Okay.
I'm not aware if they're going to be clearing that out. But they will do here what they have to do to get sewer or to grade and get the site ready for all the other amenities that are in here. And these are, the brown is the townhomes. They do have a tot lot here, a picnic area here, which fulfills the requirements of improved open space. All the combined area is 10%, meets the requirements for townhomes. They also have a kiosk here with parking, visitor parking as well as kiosk parking, and of course additional off-street visitor parking spaces, and comply with the spacing of driveways between units to have, that we require between, spacing here for 20 feet separation in spots. Is there any questions at this time?
Remember I had a question before about the trees, about clearing out all of the trees that were there? And I thought he said that they were going to try and not do that. Is that still on the table, or has that been
Well, they're
removed?
going to try to preserve as much as they can, subject to trying to put the amenities in. And I'll let the applicant answer
Okay,
that question
sounds good.
better.
Thank
I think
you.
it'd be better. Thank you. It'd be better to let him testify more on that. But the note here, and I apologize, I guess I should have done an enlargement. There is a note on the plan about retaining and saving existing trees as much as possible.
I have a question about the buffers, Deanie. You said you went over the different types of buffers and you pointed out the one that I guess is gonna be near the daycare. And it's less screened than the one near Pine Glow. Can you explain to me the why? What's the rationale for
It's
that?
specifically spelled out in the ordinance. There's a table, and it's identifying what we call classes of uses.
Right?
And you do a cross-reference of that table. It specifies the type, and it specifies the width.
So for a daycare, it's less screening required?
Yes. Between residential.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that, but okay. Yeah. I would think there would be more screening
I
there.
would think so. That caught me too. I
With the
was surprised
daycare.
at that.
That's a question to looking at when we rewrite the UDO.
I don't like that.
But that is the current requirement.
That's
Is
weird.
the parking, Danny, the same as the townhouses that are already built right now?
No, this is using a new requirement. The Phase 5 doesn't meet that requirement. It's new, they do, but the older phases do not, because that was changed about 2.5 years ago. This meets the new requirement
Requirement for the townhouses that are being built now?
that in Phase 5 of Granite Ridge, over there towards Grand Rock Way, is under construction. That meets it.
That's under construction. That's what I was at, yes.
Yeah, that meets it.
Okay.
But, and this will too. This is a view of the townhomes, basically the siding, the materials, the look of the townhomes, typical, similar to what you have out there now. So the 2002 thoroughfare plan identifies Roger Roads as 4-lane with a center turn lane as a major highway. Existing improvements on this portion of Rogers Road that fronts where the commercial does complies with the thoroughfare plan. So there'll be no additional improvements required other than whatever they do based off the traffic impact, driveway, et cetera, when the plan comes in. Grand Rock Way is not identified on the 2002 thoroughfare plan, which is basically a local street, but it does have a 60-foot right-of-way, 31-foot back-to-back, street improvement, which is basically what we call a residential collector type. It's a little bit wider than a regular residential street. And it is existing and does have curb and gutter. They will be doing, I have to check to see if the sidewalks are required. I don't believe they are on that side. We're going to do sidewalks on one side since it's not a PUD. Forgive me, I clicked something I shouldn't have clicked. As a result of analysis, looking into the traffic impact analysis, we asked for a standard protocol of a determination letter that is in your packet. And it was determined that this site will not generate, including the commercial with the residential, will not generate enough traffic for the site that comes from the site that will require a TIA study, since the impact will be less than those standards, which are thresholds in section 9.11.2. Therefore, there's no impact analysis, specifically what recommendation of improvements required for this development, but that letter is in the file to show you that the documentation's there.
And when you refer to commercial, you're referring to current commercial that's there, not the section that's not being developed with that
They did a
proposed-
scenario on the commercial.
that developed?
If it would develop, then they tried to pick the strictest, which the ordinance calls for. So I think they used some type of fast food or shopping center consideration,
Okay, thank you.
which is pretty much standard protocol, because the ordinance says go with its highest traffic generator, when you don't know exactly what it is.
Worst case scenario.
There was a neighborhood meeting held in August of last year. 3 persons attend, and a summary report's included in your agenda package. At the end of that summary, you will see that we received an email from one of the persons that attend. This actually came in November when I was having the knee surgery. And they objected to the driveway being connected, the private drive connected that goes between Coffee Lodge and AutoZone being connected to the townhomes private drive on South Main Street. That's the one you get into the Coffee Lodge and AutoZone. It's shared. Now, our town policy and the comprehensive plan encourages connectivity to adjoining properties. The proposed site plan that I showed you shows the connection, and the trip generator ladder from Ramey Kemp Associates shows 740 daily site trips. And of course, our threshold is 1,000. So it didn't meet that. But I'm sharing also with you that that report says AM peak is 30 in the morning, the most in 1 hour, 9 entering the site, 21 exiting. Now, that's not specific to any driveway. It could be any one of those connections. PM peak is 62 with 33 entering and 29 exiting. And that's probably because it's considering more of the commercial activity on the corner of the track, which you'll see more activity in the afternoon. But I'm just sharing that information to have an idea of what this generates. With the comment about the connection of the townhouse site to the private drive access to South Main Street, the applicant has presented an alternate plan, was submitted without a connection to South Main Street private drive. So I will show you that, and this will force all traffic onto Rogers Road that will have to go, to get to South Main Street, will have to go through the Rogers Road intersection. The only connections will be the driveway behind CVS and the access on Grand Walk Way to come. If they're trying to head into Raleigh, they're going to have to route that way. So the difference here is everything looks the same before, and this will be in there, but there's a disconnect right here. The current pavement ends at this point. The new drive will provide a T turnaround here if needed. Fire department requested that. And will connect to between the daycare and CVS. So then this will not connect, and this recorded easement that was adjusted because of this development, originally went through this site and got moved here, will become a shared driveway between the two properties here on the front. And if they do a connection of the commercial, it would occur right across from the driveway of the post office, the rear. But within this development, if you choose to go with this option, is access through this portion of the townhomes as a secondary access, primary here, and of course, internally, this point. This is not going to be easy flowing. It's going to be a lot of maneuvering. The advantage of this connection in the original plan is it allows you to come out and make a right turn and go down Main Street very easily without having to create traffic hazard.
Does that
Of
cut
course,
in
we
front?
do have the Main Street planning process to go look at that intersection, how to address those traffic demands.
Does that cut in front of the Coffee Lodge between AutoZone and the Coffee Lodge? I just can't really tell. Or is
I
it
think
cutting behind
There is a
it?
sign that says do not do that. Of course, that doesn't prevent people from doing it.
But
I
I'm saying
think
the way
there
that
was
is-
There was an issue in the past, I was aware of cutting through here.
Okay, that's what I thought. It looked like that. Okay, thank you.
So, Danny, does the traffic study that was done, does it take this scenario into consideration, or
The area does not to identify which one.
it's just general information for the whole project?
Right, and it did not hit the threshold to require a full-fledged study. That's very low, it's basically very low traffic.
Right. So if in that one, I'm sorry, one more
Go
time.
ahead, sure.
In that one right there, then the street between the daycare and CVS, that would be an exit point for the people in the neighborhood, which it is not right now, and it will not be on the other plan. Is that
It is
correct?
on the other plan.
It is on the other plan. Okay, 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 okay.
The difference is the disconnect right here.
Got it. Okay.
So you're saying that's not going to be easy flowing? What do you mean by that?
Well, your driveways are all set.
Yeah, it's not really an exit. It feels like that's a parking lot.
It's part of the shared parking. It was originally part of that shared parking of the commercial site. And like I said, this driveway here used to be, in the original plan, originally was here, and it got moved to there. That driveway used to be at that location, but when this development came in, it was shifted over. And this easement will be abandoned, because that's where the landscaping buffer is going. They will be sharing this driveway between the two parcels. That's already in an agreement between the
Okay, wait,
property
what two
owners.
parcels is that? That would be the commercial
The
site?
commercial and the daycare.
Right.
The
So there-
existing driveway you see there now.
So 1, 2, 3.
I'm just a little lost. So you're saying cars can come in and out of that direction?
No, they can to get internally to these two parcels, but not to this. The only
Okay.
access is going to be here and here and here, those 3 points.
Okay.
Primary is going to be Grand Walk Way.
And the one at the Coffee Lodge would be an exit only to turn right onto 401.
Depending on how the design of the Main Street project goes.
Okay.
So depending, meaning it can be both?
Again, I don't have the plans to be able to specify what the Main Street project is going to do at that location. That's part of the stakeholder process and design.
So I guess I'm a little confused then, because if someone's seeking approval for this and you still have another plan that's coming behind it, it can very well change again.
Well, the impact of this site will primarily affect Rogers Road.
Okay.
It will not affect this,
Of that, the commercial site.
the commercial site, yes.
But what about the residential?
The residential, that's what you're seeing that being proposed now.
And that's where you're saying it can very well change.
That it won't change if
Oh,
if
okay.
it's approved and gets built.
Are these roads private or public?
They will be private.
Private, okay.
And that's the reason why they can allow to have straight-in perpendicular, straight-in parking.
Okay.
I mean, not parallel, perpendicular 90-degree parking backing into the space for the visitors parking.
They are private, Danny, but they're built to town standards.
They are built to town standards, and we do inspect them. But they're privately maintained, will be part of the HOA. And all the streets here are privately maintained. These are not public streets, all of these.
But some of the streets in the older part is not town standards, I don't think.
It is, to my knowledge, it's to town standards, but I can't speak to the earlier phases.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I'm not familiar with that, to address that question. But it is private streets.
Now, what do we do if those are private roads and they fall into disrepair that don't meet town standards? How do we work with that?
It's still an action for the HOA to address,
Okay,
and we notify them that they need to address it.
okay.
But it's not on the town's street maintenance system, and of course, we do not apply, it does not apply to the POW bill funding.
Okay.
So Technical Review Committee has reviewed the proposed site plan and recommends approval with the connection to South Main Street. Planning staff recommendation is to approve this special use permit, a master team mixed-use master plan, and the detailed site plan with connection to South Main Street, subject to the evidence and testimony presented at public hearing. And I will,
Can you tell me what a daycare is classified as in this class table thing? I'm sorry, I'm still struggling.
I'd have to go look at it. I think
If you could let me know that, that would be
I think it's
great.
a class, I don't want to say yet.
I can't tell from the descriptions. So if you could let me know that, I appreciate it. Thank you, Dean.
But I can inform you of that.
Okay, thank you.
But it is meeting the requirements specified in that table.
I just don't see it listed, so I'm not sure what it's classed under.
I'm gonna leave that up there on the testimony.
So you through with your
Sorry, that's
presentation?
all I have, unless you
Okay.
have questions.
Does the board have any questions of staff, of Danny?
Not at this time.
Thank you.
Does the applicant have questions of staff?
Maybe I need to ask a question.
Okay.
Okay, I need to ask a question. So I want to talk about, now's the time to talk about the connector street, the one that comes out on 401.
I think you might want to discuss it with everybody coming through. with the
Okay.
hearing, and then we'll do a winter discussion after.
Very good, okay.
So, my suggestion.
Yeah. Okay, applicants, no questions for the staff? Does the opponents have any questions of staff? Come up. State your name and address, please, for the record. I think you can use that one, yeah.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Mike McCroy, and I own the Coffee Lodge.
Is that turned on?
I don't know, it wasn't working right last night. either.
Does it sound
Not
like
turned
it?
on?
The mic,
We can't hear you.
tap on it.
See?
Oh, there, it sounds like it's
Is that
working.
good? Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. So, my name is Mike McCroy, and I own the Coffee Lodge in town here. Built that 10 years ago. My house sold us the land for that. I'm in a favor for the townhome project. I'm disapprove of the connector street connecting onto South Main Street from the back of behind our property for a whole host of reasons. Starting with the
Sir,
yes.
this is the point where you would have a question for a staff member. You'll have your opportunity to provide your testimony later in the hearing.
Okay, well, I'll just wait then.
Okay, you don't have a question for Danny?
No.
Okay,
Okay.
yep, thanks. Sorry about that.
Okay. Since there's no other questions for staff, let's hear evidence by the applicant.
Mr. Mayor, if it's permissible in the interest of time, I'd like to get all of our witnesses up here so they can follow one behind the other. Is that okay?
Just keep some space in you
Sure.
guys.
Sure.
So we're gonna wipe down the mics and stuff after everybody spoke.
I think they got masks on. Keep, as long as you keep the mask on.
Okay, cool.
With or without the mask.
You got it. You good?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Thurston Debnam. I am the attorney for the applicant. I've practiced law in Wake County for in excess of 40 years. I have been a municipal attorney for about 15 years. I have been an elected official. All of that I could stand was 4 years. Most of my practice is related to land use and land use development. We have some witnesses here tonight who have put together the pieces of this plan, and I'd like to first call on Johnny Edwards, who's our engineer, who will give you his name, address, background, credentials, and I'll have some questions for him.
Yes, I'm Johnny Edwards. I'm a professional engineer and registered land surveyor and the designer of the project. Our office resides in Raleigh, North Carolina, 333 Wade Avenue.
Stay right there, I've got questions for you.
Oh, questions from me? Okay.
Mr. Edwards, since you designed this project, do all the streets within the property accommodate fire trucks and rescue vehicles?
Yes, they do.
Are fire hydrants located throughout as required by the ordinances?
They're located, required by the ordinance, yes.
To the best of your knowledge, is the design of the development comply with all public health and safety ordinances of the town of Rolesville?
Yes, they do.
To the best of your knowledge, does the proposed development or use generally conform with the comprehensive plan and other plans adopted by the town of Rolesville?
It conforms with the comprehensive plan and the UDO.
To the best of your knowledge, is the proposed development appropriately located with respect to transportation facilities, water and sewer supply, fire and police protection, and similar facilities?
Yes, we have public water and sewer, and we're located in close proximity to police and fire.
And is the proposed development and use of this property generally in compliance with all applicable requirements of the ordinances of the town of Rolesville?
Yes, it is.
And in your career, how many projects have you supervised and engineered in the town of Rolesville?
10 or 15.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have any further questions, but the board may have questions for.
Got anybody else you want to introduce first, or?
I do.
Yeah, let's get everybody introduced, and then we'll ask for questions.
Next, we have a representative from Ramey Kemp, who's the traffic engineers. It is my understanding that the size of this project did not require a traffic impact analysis or study, but the developer decided that was a good idea to have that anyway, so we'll let him introduce himself, and I'll ask a few questions.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Board. My name is Stephen Green. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of North Carolina. I work for Ramey Kemp and Associates. Our address is 5808 Carrington Place in Raleigh, North Carolina.
And did your company undertake a traffic impact analysis or study?
We did a trip generation letter for consultation with the town staff and NCDOT.
And it's your understanding that the size of this project does not actually require such an analysis?
Correct. The trip generation showed that it did not.
Are you familiar with the traffic pattern and plan that's been developed and proposed for this particular subdivision?
Yes, sir.
In your opinion, will the proposed development or use cause any undue traffic congestion or create a traffic hazard?
No, sir.
My name is Hal Perry. I'm the developer of this project. My offices are at 6200 Falls of the Noose Road in Raleigh.
And Mr. Perry, what is your occupation and what has it been?
I've been a real estate broker for almost 35 years and a developer for approximately 20 of those. And my primary developments are in residential, although I have done commercial and some hotels.
And which projects have you developed in the town of Rolesville?
From memory, Granite Crest, Granite Falls, Granite Ridge, the Grand at Granite Falls, and Granite Falls Apartments, as well as Granite Falls Swimming Athletic Club. Scott Granite in it, I was involved in it. Of course, Rolesville can claim Granite first.
Do you claim Granite Acres?
No. Didn't know we had one of those. Who stole that?
Mr. Perry, in your occupation as a real estate broker and as a developer, are you familiar generally with real estate values in the town of Rolesville and the surrounding area?
I am.
Is it your opinion that the proposed development will not substantially injure the value of adjoining properties?
That is my opinion, yes.
At this time, that's all the witnesses that the applicant has.
Do you have any other evidence you want to enter at all?
We only have the plan, and of course, what has been stated by town staff, which is that there are a couple of ways that to handle the traffic for this project, and the developer applicant is okay with either one that the town commissioners and mayor would like, or staff, whatever the town decides in that regard is perfectly acceptable with the applicant.
Understand. Okay. Does the board have any questions of the applicants?
I do not at this time.
Anybody? Okay. Does opponents have any questions of this applicant? Okay. Come up, restate your name and address, please.
Okay, my name is Mike McRoy, and 412 South Main Street is my business address. Everybody probably knows the Coffee Lodge here. Hal sold me the property 10 years ago, and we developed it from the dirt to what we have today. We're very popular in town. So I have opposition to the connector street going behind the CVS, AutoZone, and the Coffee Lodge for numerous reasons. First, we already know there's a cut-through problem.
Any questions, though, for the applicant? Anything you want to ask them, a
I'm
question?
sorry, I'm just not really aware of how you guys are doing this. Just wait again.
Wait again.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll get there. Thank you for patience on that.
No problem.
But isn't this the time to ask about the trees? If we have a question about the trees?
If you have a question,
Ask the
yeah. If you
applicant
have
that,
a any question you have for the applicant,
Okay.
be time to ask.
So yes, when you all came before us before, initially you talked about preserving the trees or looking at preserving as many trees as possible. And it looks real sparse to me from this drawing. So maybe Johnny, if you can explain it and if there's an opportunity to increase the amount of trees that are on the property.
Well, we didn't commit to saving any trees. We committed to looking at the areas in the playground area, and if there were any specimen trees other than spindly pine trees, then we would see if it fitted through the landscape plan.
That wasn't exactly how it
Well,
went.
y'all had a storm through here.
That's not the way I remember it, and we might need to pull out some notes.
Neither do
But
I.
the reason it had come up about the trees is because we had an issue in Carlton Point and some trees. There was some, seemed to be misunderstanding about some of the trees that were taken away. So I think at the time when you all presented, there was a big old discussion from the board about the trees and how we are very interested in preserving a lot of trees. I'm not saying that you made a commitment, but I remember that discussion and us expressing that we were very interested in there being some trees on that property. Maybe
Well,
other.
we were planting, if you go look at the landscape plan, we were planting trees within the project. And landscaping and lower canopy hardwoods are much better than these toothpick pine trees out there that, as y'all know, you had a windstorm that came through, you were down for power for days in town, and that's the same situation that would happen here. But if we find any specimen trees, we will see if they can fit into the landscape plan and save them.
Yeah, because that was a concern from the board, that the trees were very important to us because we had another project that we had some misunderstanding around the trees. You may remember
There's
that.
no misunderstanding here.
Gotcha.
Maybe it's a good time to, I know Danny went through it, but from y'all's perspective, to describe the landscaping plan that we see up there and what it will look like.
And can I just add to that? Not only the trees by the daycare, but I know that many residents, when I was knocking on doors, were asking about the trees that line up against Granite Ridge Drive,
Granite Ridge Drive.
where the townhouses are now, where the dead end is.
Where the existing townhomes are?
Yes.
What was your question?
They were asking about the trees over there, and I remember bringing that up at the last meeting, where you were in attendance for this project. So they were asking about the trees along the perimeter of the area that's looking to be developed.
That'll be the playground area that's in the back right there, that they're
I don't know. Let me
marking
see.
that. Yeah, that back long
I don't know
green.
that that's a playground because.
On the far left.
Yeah, we're on the left
Yeah.
side.
Our plan notes that in the playground areas, which are the other open areas, that if we find any specimen trees that would enhance the area and would not damage the project, we would attempt to save them, but we're making no commitment to save the pine trees.
I'm not asking about saving the trees. I'm not talking about any specific trees that you're referring to because we weren't that specific when we spoke last time. I was just asking, really, like, what type of trees is this right here? What are you looking to plant along this perimeter?
Pardon me?
On the back end of the property, away from the daycare, on the left side of the property?
The backside of the property.
Yes.
That's
What-
that's the top lot area,
Is it? Okay.
and if there are any trees in that area that are worth saving, that would be a benefit to the top lot area, either by
Okay.
shade, then we will attempt to save them, but not the pine trees.
Okay. So that whole area is playground area?
All along the existing townhomes to the west is a tot lot area, and then around the stormwater facility is where we have an outdoor grill area and picnic tables.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Sheila, you get your question answered fully?
It just looks sparse to me. I will just go on record as it looks really sparse based on what I see there. So,
Which side you talking about, the back side or?
the backside and then
Yeah.
butting up against the daycare is
Yeah,
a
I
concern for me.
guess some of this is opaque, right?
Yeah.
What is opaque and what's not? I think everything's opaque except what's joined to the other townhouses, is that right? Is that the way I understand?
We've got a combination of a fence and, we have a combination of a fence and enhanced planting along the pine glow side, which would be the southern side of the property. That's the opaque buffer. Behind the daycare is enhanced planting, but not quite as intense as the industrial site.
Is there a fence there as well?
Not behind the daycare, no.
I just don't understand. I know you follow protocol in doing this, but it just doesn't make sense logically why you would not have that extra protection up from the residents and that commercial build space there. Also, is this tot lot available to everybody in this development?
Only in the 47 lots that are being developed.
Oh, that's it? Okay. All right, thank you. But do you understand our concern about the daycare and the residential homes that are going up?
Well, I think, let me just address this if I can. There are always concerns, and if I was sitting where you're sitting, I'd be asking the same questions and looking for the same answers. The first thing we did was make sure we developed this in compliance with the ordinances and guidelines that the town of Rolesville had adopted. We've done that all the way from the beginning when we started almost 20 years ago. And they change and improve, as the mayor was referencing. Some of the original townhomes, the streets are not as wide, a little less parking, but every time we've moved on, if you look at Phase 5, which is being developed now, there is more of that, and there's a lot more of this. We left almost, could have been some ways we could have gotten 12 more townhomes in there if we wanted to just jam-pack them and see how many we could get. But what we tried to accomplish was what we could do the very best and maintain the integrity of the development and not get so many. When you're dealing with single-family homes and you're dealing with larger lots, you can work around trees if you have those. When you're dealing with townhomes, the very nature of the beast, you can see from reducing from the 59 we could have gotten to 47, there's still not room for a lot of trees. I personally went out and walked that land many times, but again, to look and see what we could do. Johnny and I looked at it. We hired a landscape architect to look at it. And it's always easier for us to preserve trees if they're not where they impact the lot or the density than to have to buy and plant trees and to go through that. They're just not out there. If you truly, it looks dense now, but if you walk through it, most of them are spindly. There's some falling over. I met with Lynn Pete, who runs the Homeowners Association, about the tot lot, and she said, I do not want mature trees around the tot lot. She just said, it's a hazard, it's a risk to us. And so we have to be careful doing that. So I just wanted to address how the sparseness that you see now, but it won't be that sparse when it's all finished and it has time to mature. But what we're trying to now accomplish is the balance of what we can put where and maintain our goals and still keep these homes in a range that certainly is not going to undercut any price in there at all. They'll be priced along the same lines of the current ones being built, but my goal is to keep them under 250 because even though that's a lot of money, that's in more range of an affordable product that people have an alternative to buy. So we've met all the ordinances. We've always tried to do more than less, but I can assure you, we hired a landscape architect to look at this and put as much in there as we could get within reason without taking on more responsibility. It's not, the people who built the daycare have a right and have the ability to add fencing, to add more buffer if they want, but we're meeting our requirement on that. But I do understand your concern. I appreciate your questions.
Any additional questions, Michelle?
I do. I have a question. Katina,
Well, hold. It can come. It's just the board is asking questions at this time. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay, I do have a question, but I can't really remember what I read about it, but I know that there was an alternative route on the side by the Coffee Lodge, going out to 401 and someplace else. Can you, I'm sorry, I know I read it, but I just can't remember. How do you?
If someone could point that out again, the outlet going down to 401, which is at the bottom of the site map, is what we thought was more in compliance, the interconnectivity that the town of Rolesville has wanted. So we designed it that way. But after we heard the concerns that the coffee shop had about it, we looked at it and said, okay, this is an alternate exit, which is the other one that would be heading toward Rogers Road that we can take, will not impact the project, will not impact anyone else. And quite frankly, we can live with that and we're happy to do so. So those are the two choices we have. And it's just up to the town to decide what they'd like to see done, and we'll do it.
Where's Danny's? Danny, where's the Coffee Lodge at on this one again? Approximately. I have an idea, but I just want to be sure.
Off the map.
Off the
but
map,
it's
right.
right in this
Very
location.
Right. Okay. All right, just wanted to make sure.
That little
Yeah.
triangle corner's their property.
and CVS is okay with that exit. That just feels weird. That's not a street. I'm confused as to why we would use a parking lot as an exit.
We haven't received any comments from CVS, and they did get notified.
But it's not a street.
First of all, excuse
Parking
me,
lot.
the street we're going out doesn't belong to CVS.
Which street are you referencing? 'Cause
Well, it's the land, it's
Danny,
no
which one?
street now, but the
Point to it,
street that
Danny.
will be constructed is being constructed onto land that we have the right
being
of way to
constructed.
use.
There we go. Clarifying for me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yes,
Because
ma'am.
I'm like, that's a parking lot. Gotcha.
You're right, that's the parking lot.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Because I was like, that's going to be
Yeah.
awkward.
I didn't recognize that either, so
Yeah,
I
I'm
know
like-
what you're talking about.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from board members? Paul, you have any questions to the applicant?
No, I'm good right now.
Sheila, you good? Everybody good for right now? Okay. Now, is there any opponents to have questions for the applicant? Where's my person over there? I would say opponents or favors, either one. Do you have a question? You have to step up to the mic, though, and give your name and address.
Who's going, her or Mike?
Okay.
Mike's like,
Mike's there.
Question was already
I'm just saying, is this the time? I don't have a question, so y'all come on.
You don't. If you got a question,
Call me when you need.
But know that he has,
Three strikes right
Good evening, everyone. My name is Katina Beasley. I live at 416 Lee Ann Ridge Lane. And my question is, I know for the Granite Falls property, you all said that there was going to be additional parking that was going to be added before the newer or the last phase took place. But as of right now, I don't see any additional parking. So my question for you with this development, are there parking? Has it already been, is it going to be in the plan or is it not?
thank you for the question. Whoever was doing transportation can answer that, please. And Danny, could you point out where she lived at? This, I think that would be beneficial.
she said Leanne Ridge, right? Leanne Ridge Lane?
I believe that's Leanne Ridge right there.
Right there? Okay.
We added additional parking in phase 5. We filled in about all the gaps we can in the earlier phases. We have exceeded the additional parking requirements in this phase, and we have added parking spaces wherever we can to fill in the gaps.
How many additional spaces were there going to be, like 5 or 6 spaces?
I'd have to look at the plan.
And this was coming from about 3 years ago.
On the plan.
No, for phase 5. For what's being built now, weren't the additional spaces supposed to be created over there?
If I remember correctly, my memory's only so good, it was 5.
Right.
6 more. And everything that was, we agreed to do has been done and being built there. There's no exception. But do keep in mind, these are not.
Related, yes, I know. It was a good time to ask the question, though, so thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
asking that question.
Thank you for the question. Is there any others that have questions for the applicant? One final call here. Okay. Now we can hear evidence from the public in favor. Mike, I think you said you was in favor, so.
Mike? He's not in favor, he's opposed.
Well, he said when you
In
spoke that he
favor.
was in favor.
right, but he said.
So you can do it now, wait to the opposed part.
I'm in favor of the project, just.
Okay, well, come up and let's hear what you got. This is your chance.
This for the opposition as well as the approval?
You can come back at opposition if you want
Well,
to.
I approve of the project the way it's designed regarding the townhomes and the residential projects. That property's needed to be developed for many years now, so it's just kind of starting to be overgrown, and I think it'll be a good addition to the community with more residential and doing something in that vacant land back there. So it'll be a nice addition to the town. So my approval is for the project itself. So I'll wait for my next disapproval.
Sounds good. Any other, hey, Robin, I know we've had quite a few. Can you mind wiping the microphone down? Maybe. Any other evidence in favor from the public? All right. I'm sure the board don't have any questions from the speaker, Mike. Do anybody have any questions? Applicant, do you have any questions from what he said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Opponents, likewise. Okay, now any evidence by the public in opposition?
Mike.
Oh, Mike.
Okay, sorry for my lack of knowledge on the government procedure, but, so, we've been there 10 years. I've spent the better part of 350 days a year, on that property, so I know everything regarding the traffic patterns, the who comes and goes, and when you own a restaurant, you pretty much live there. So we already know there's a cut-through problem. There's signs at the entrance of the daycare, the CVS on Rogers, as well as the entrance on my side. So we are constantly battling people cutting through, whether they're trying to avoid the traffic light to turn left onto Rogers coming north on South Main. So they'll shoot down between myself and AutoZone, slam on the brakes, have to back up. It can be a car, a truck, a tractor trailer, just all different types. So we know they're going to avoid the left turn at the stoplight because it does back up. In the morning, no one follows commuter traffic rules in the mornings because most people are running late. So they'll tend to turn right on Rogers into the CVS, come through the front of the parking lot, and shoot out onto 401. So we know that's going to be a problem. And when they round the curve at the CVS, they'll oftentimes just really speeding, and there's pedestrians leaving their cars, walking into the CVS. It's quite dangerous, and that's just through the front. So if we create turn 4 at Talladega behind the CVS and AutoZone and coming around by my shop, their speeding is going to be tremendous. That's going to be a residential area with children, bicycles, pedestrians. The kids already play in the streets of the townhomes behind the post office. I've seen it. I have friends that live there, so we know that's going to be people in the streets. So that can create a pretty big hazard. There will be the connector road beside me is only 28 feet wide, and that's connecting onto a thoroughfare. Now, should that be a new road, have had to be a new road, it would be required in today's DOT standards to be 34 feet wide. But because it was built before they changed the standards, it's allowed to be grandfathered in. So that road already connecting beside me onto those residential streets back there is not wide enough to handle an entrance and a left and right turn exit onto 401 to meet the thoroughfare standards of the DOT. So that's a main problem we already see right there. So there's let's see what else we got going. We all have been to Chick-fil-A in Wake Forest. We know the traffic backs up onto the street that heads over towards Target, Home Depot. We have quite a bit of morning traffic, so any traffic that's going to be cutting through will back up my traffic trying to exit my business. We have room for 3 cars to back up on to turn onto 401, and if there's a fourth car there, then my customers can't leave my parking lot, and therefore the next one can't enter our parking lot to order. So the way that's designed, the way the little cut-through street into the subdivision is designed off Grand Rock Way. If you picture a square where that goes out onto Rogers, comes down to the corner at 401, and then turns south onto 401, you're basically creating a 4th leg of a square for all. I mean, I counted and got into the 300s of townhomes back there. Most of them have 2 cars, so you've got the better part of 400 to 500 cars. And I would say, not an expert, but many of them are going to go south into Raleigh. So they're not going to go onto Rogers, up to the stoplight, wait, turn right. They're pretty much going to cut through that subdivision where it's residential, homeowners, children, pedestrians, to get onto 401. It's just natural for them to cut through that, all those townhomes back there to cut through, as well as anyone coming from Wake Forest on Rogers would choose to cut through either the daycare parking lot or enter into the CVS entrance, shoot around the back, and then clog up the entrance waiting to turn onto 401 South, which can be a very difficult thing in the morning hours, which that brings it back to my business model. 80% of our business is before 10 a.m. So if my customers can't get in and out, everyone's in a hurry, they're not going to come. So we chose that piece of land and built that business from the ground up on the dirt when we bought it, with that being designed to have a commercial property back there. I think it was supposed to be a shopping center of some sorts, which typically wouldn't be a cut-through road through a shopping center parking lot. I mean, not many people shoot through food line just to get to the ball field over behind the food line. So with that in mind, we had a morning business model that wasn't going to have any traffic flow problems. And with the creation of a street that's going to interchange as well as a road behind the CVS, that's just two opportunities for people to cut through and just totally choke our business off. So I'm in extreme opposition. I mean, you pretty much put me out of business, I would say, if that is allowed to connect in that way. And that's why I talked with Johnny back in November, and we had came up with possibly a plan to have that either be a cul-de-sac that was a dead end and didn't go behind AutoZone, CVS, or myself. It was just a turnaround, and you went back out onto Grand Rock Way. And Grand Rock Way is designed to handle, as a 34-foot wide thoroughfare, easily an extra 47 townhomes worth of traffic. So all that traffic would be forced out onto the Grand Rock Way. Or it could possibly there again go behind the CVS, which wouldn't be detrimental to my business. And there again, the CVS, the AutoZone does not have an entrance into their front parking lot from the rear, so customers wouldn't be cutting through. It wouldn't affect their business traffic because they don't even have an entrance that would connect from the rear. CVS would have their drive-through, and some customers, their drive-through might be a little bit affected, but there's probably enough width space back there for them to still have that flow around the corner of the building. So there again, like I say, I'm in favor of the townhomes, but a connector street coming out onto 401 South Main Street, it's not going to look good for my business if that's approved in that design. And I believe that's why we came up with two options, or Johnny and Hal came up with a second option for you guys.
Okay. Well,
That's
thanks,
pretty much
Mike. Any questions for Mike, the opposition? Mike? No? Does the applicant have any questions for the speaker?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate
thanks, guys.
that. I think that close all the evidence. You got a question? Okay.
Christina Beasley, 416 Leanne Ridge. My concerns are similar to his when it comes to the traffic control. Again, I am on Leanne Ridge, and it's really about, would it be any traffic strategies or any speed bumps just to try to curtail the traffic that will be coming through where your driveways and all of that will be, in order to stop them from coming through the town already there. Also, when it comes to the parking, would they be able to park on their street? Because right now, when you mentioned Lynn P, we are not able to park on the street within Granite Ridge right now. So my concerns are basically about traffic and parking. Thank you.
I understand your concerns, so I'll try and address them in your order that you asked them. Leanne Ridge will not be affected, should not be affected at all, nor would Morgan Brook Ray. The traffic is going to come in usually one of two ways. Right off of Rogers Road onto Grand Rock and come through, and then would go out the same way, or if we have the connection back to Rogers Road, could loop around and come back out onto Rogers Road just further down where you see the extension there. If the town chooses to go with the location onto South Main Street, then it would come to there. So I don't envision traffic. That's me. I'm not an expert on traffic. Maybe I qualify to some degree in real estate, but not traffic. But we can get someone else to say that. But Leanne Ridge should not be affected at all. On parking, nothing that we do in these lots are going to enhance your parking where you are now. Unfortunately, it is what it is. Parking on the street in these 47 will not be allowed. I don't think the fire marshal would appreciate us trying to do that. They are private streets. but we're not allowing that. We are making each home will have a two-car garage, one or two-car garage, and 2 parking pads for each home, in addition to the extra parking spaces that we've added wherever we could. So we're trying to address that in a more proactive fashion. But people have to, and boats won't be allowed to be parked there. Work vehicles will not, commercial work vehicles will not be allowed to park there. They will have the same covenants and restrictions that you have, just as in the rest of Granite Ridge. They'll all be the same, other than these units will have more parking lots, more parking spaces than the other ones before. I don't like speed bumps. I don't know if the town has the authority to approve them or not, but there will not be speed bumps in there.
I actually have a question, Hal, before you leave.
Yes, ma'am.
Based on what Mike said, with his concerns for his business, with the roads coming in, do you have a solution to that? I mean, I know there's an opportunity for 2 different cut-throughs. If you do, that maybe give some clarity, because...
But, we understood. We thought that the connection to 401 South was the best. But when he raised his concern, I believe in small business, that's what I've always considered we had, and that's what I think Rolesville has built its success on. So we listened to his concern, and we said, okay, we've got this land here, we can take it, we won't connect to buy his coffee shop, we have every right to connect back out. As long as the town feels good about it, then we're willing to change the plan to go back out and just be back out on Rogers Road further down. It's my understanding, again, I'm not trying to speak for anybody, but from what I've read, I think the fire marshal, fire chief, likes that one the best. I may have just misread somewhere. And we're good with that. In fact, based on what he said tonight, I'd like to tell you that's our preference. But at the end of the day, we'll put it where the town says.
Okay, so I have a question for Danny. So with that said, where would that road come out? Because I'm all confused in this little tiny map. Where would that road come out at, based on what Hal just said?
Without the connection or with the connection?
Without.
Without the connection. All right, here's CVS, AutoZone, Coffee Lodge.
Okay.
This road will come here. The fire department, or fire marshal requested that there would be a T turnaround for the fire department here.
Okay.
All of this that's provided, and then there's the driveway there. And the other is Leanne in the back of the other townhomes connection here.
So that road on the map here wouldn't exist?
This existing street stub here will remain as it is.
Okay, so then I have a question for Mike. I'm just trying to figure it out before 12 o'clock tonight. So with what you're saying, Mike, would that work for you?
Oh, yes, very much so.
Okay, so with that said, is there anything stopping that from happening tonight? Okay, just want to make sure. All right.
Good question.
Okay.
Got it cleared up. Is there any rebuttal? Anything you heard you want a chance to rebuttal before I close the public hearing?
Good, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. One last call for the board. Any questions to the staff or anybody here? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing.
I got a question real quick. It's regarding the trees. I know we're going back and forth on this with taking trees out, putting them back in. First, I want to commend you on your map. You guys did a really good job of showing everything you're going to plant and everything else. That's great to actually see. You know, we're not going to put like whatever we want to put in there. You guys did a great job of spelling that out, actually. To simplify the open space and whether we're going to save trees or this or that, can we get just a commitment of 30 or 40 trees will be in the open spaces, planted new?
We can't do it.
Okay.
I will tell you, and you can, I'll be glad if everybody wants to take a field trip.
Mhm.
We put our moccasins on. Can you hear me?
TV can't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't look real good on TV anyway, so. I'll be glad to take a field trip after the vote with everybody, and you'll see what we're seeing.
Right.
We'd be fortunate to find 4 really good trees that won't impact the development of the project that would be worthy of saving. I may be surprised, and whatever they are, it's always easier to save a tree. You know, again, the homeowners association made it clear to us, they don't want any if, any buts about the stability of any trees left close to the daycare lots or to the areas they may have to maintain. But yes, you know, believe it or not, in all the developments we've had, we didn't go in with the idea just grade it flat. We tried to save trees where we could.
Thank you. Answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, I think the town manager has a question.
So cognizant of this, based upon our history, I want to follow up on Paul's question. So that sheet that is called landscape plan has specific numbers of trees listed and locations. So that will be the plan. And if there's additional, you'll save, but that will be followed with those counts per this plan.
That's the minimum. Yeah.
That's the minimum, but I just want to make sure
Right.
that's the commitment.
At least, as long as that's committed, yeah.
This is the plan,
Yeah.
this is the numbers,
Right.
and then whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, before I close the public hearing, one last call. Any questions? All right.
If you can save any extra trees by the daycare, go for it. Put my request out there.
All
Protect
right.
the babies.
I'm gonna close the public hearing and turn this over to the board for making a decision. I think what I heard, you can make a decision on whether to approve or not approve the site plan here. Also, you know, you make a decision, it's a board's decision on whether you want to make that connection in there by the coffee shop or not. So I believe actually you got 2 decisions to make in your motion. One is to approve or deny. If you approve, then you have to add whether you want to make that connection or not.
Ronnie, what page is that on? I don't flip through so many maps.
What I'm looking for too.
What page can we find that at? Anybody have it? Sheila, Paul?
What's
For
that?
the
Motion.
options?
The motion.
Oh, for the motion.
Lydia?
But I would make a motion to approve the development with the alternative option of
Yes,
the road
definitely.
not coming through by Coffee Lodge.
Right.
I don't know if I have to read the actual.
No, I
because
think
don't
that's
have that in
probably
front of me.
good.
Okay, good.
That's good. Sounded good to me.
Okay.
So I got a motion to approve
I second it.
without the connection with the Coffee Lodge. And I got a second from Michelle. So I got a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor say aye.
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 I think that was 4 votes, Madam Clerk. Any opposed? Shouldn't be. Thank you very much. Motion passed. All right, thank you. Appreciate you coming. Our next item is another public hearing for case SP 19-04 Rolesville CrossFit Site Plan. This is also a quasi-judicial type procedure, and I will ask to start with for the town attorney to do the introduction.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Going to see if Commissioner Wilson was on his way in. Thank you.
Oh, Jackie.
I will ask the town attorney to do an introduction to this one.
We should have thanked
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we did for our last quasi-judicial matter, we have the qualification questions. And you'll recall that, again, this is a quasi-judicial matter, which leaves it as an evidentiary hearing. And so these questions are directed to all the board members seated. Welcome back, Commissioner. Is any member predisposed to vote a particular way on this matter such that their opinion is fixed and the evidence presented during this hearing is not likely to influence their decision?
No.
Has any board member discussed this matter with either proponents or opponents or others?
No.
No.
Is any member not able to make his or her decision in this matter solely based on the evidence presented at the hearing?
No.
No.
That's all I have, and we can swear folks in.
There's a motion to provide testimony if you would stand and raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Okay. I will open the public hearing, and first I'll hear evidence from the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you introduced, this is a public hearing quasi-judicial for site plan 1904 Rolesville CrossFit site plan, which is for a one-story commercial building at 1.78 acres at 550 Granite Falls Boulevard. They're proposing a 7,394 square foot one-story building at that location that's in a commercial outlying special use district zoning district. The site plan shows proposed parking spaces, driveways, sidewalks, water and sewer services, and landscaping for the site. The future land use plan adopted in 2017 classifies this parcel as commercial use. And of course, I've already identified the current zoning classification. And of course, this is the location. This is Granite Falls Boulevard. This is Granite Falls Phase 6 subdivision. That's the new street that's with houses being built now. This is Granite Falls Swim Club and Athletic Club. And of course, this is the proposed site. The town's park facility, that trailhead is right here in the upper right-hand corner. That's the driveway that goes to the trailhead to Main Street Park. And of course, this whole area here has the same zoning classification, is vacant at this time. And of course, on the zoning map on the right, that's the location showing all the zoning classification that goes all the way up to Rogers Road, and of course, similar zoning with surrounding. Thoroughfare plan identifies Granite Falls Boulevard as a 2-lane with the bicycle lanes as a minor highway. Existing improvements for this portion of Granite Falls Boulevard complies with the thoroughfare plan. Again, it's similar like the other case. The results of a traffic analysis report identified it did not generate enough traffic for the site to require a TIA study. So therefore, no traffic impact analysis is required. However, in your packet is that analysis with the results. And it's less than the threshold. Here is the site, proposed building, parking, stormwater, an outside exercise area in the back. All the area beyond this dashed line will be left in its natural state. That's a stream buffer and other buffers. And of course, the driveway entrance is here, which is more the better location with visibility, sight distance, etc. And of course, there's already an existing sidewalk here now. And of course, this will do the connection all the way through with access to a public way sidewalk, from the sidewalk to the building. Landscaping, there will be some landscaping along the perimeter of the parking spaces and within the site. As per the landscape ordinance, the existing vegetation complies with the adjacent, particularly on this side. All this is going to be retained as natural. It's a stream buffer, etc., and no additional landscaping is going to be required. And as you can tell, I don't know if you can tell, but this is where their demarcation of where they're disturbing, removing the trees. So this is going to stay wooded. All around here will stay wooded as it is naturally. Building view, combination that meets our non-residential mason area ordinance with a combination of stone or other materials in this plan. It will be ephes on the ends, on the sides here, with brick on the sides, with a combination, I believe, ephes and brick, which is allowed by the ordinance.
What's ephes?
It's kind of like a stucco,
Oh, okay. Thank you.
but it's not metal.
Gotcha.
Neighborhood meeting was held in February 27, 2020. 3 persons attend. The report is included in the agenda. I'll let them address to what people said there, but it's in their report. Technical Review Committee has reviewed the proposed site plan and recommend approval. Planning staff recommends approval that for SP 1904 Rolesville CrossFit site plan is shown, subject to the evidence and testimony presented at the public hearing. That's all I have to present, unless there's some questions.
A question on the elevation. I think it was described as a 1-story. Is this a 2-story? It's shown at 12-foot above finished floor for the second floor. So is it a single story or is it a 2-story building?
I'll let them address that question.
Okay. And the other question I have is on the water retainage.
The DMP?
Yeah, all the drawings show proposed retaining wall by others. Just wanted to clarify who.
What that
by
means
others
is the engineer did not design the retaining wall. They
Okay.
will get a qualified design for that separate.
All right.
And that normally requires a building permit. Done by
Okay.
a professional, usually structure engineer, I believe.
Okay.
Danny, I have a quick question for you, just clarity on the map. Does the opening that comes out, does that bump up against the bike lane? I may be far off. I just was over there recently.
Here,
Yeah, the
it
opening.
does cross the bike lane, yes. It'll be another driveway, just like it is at Granite Falls Boulevard, and
You talking about the Greenway?
Greenway's further over.
The bike lane on the street already on Granite Falls Boulevard, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that normal for a driveway to intersect with a bike lane? Am I missing something?
It does. It does at Granite Falls
It
too.
does?
Yes.
Okay.
It's normal.
I
It
just,
is normal.
Ingress, egress from campus.
okay, because I just noticed it was there when I was walking over there the other day. Okay.
Any other questions for staff? I have one, Danny.
Yes, sir.
With the parking. I know you described this as a commercial building, so the parking requirements, is it for the building or is it for the special, they're using it for a fitness center? So the
It's associated with the fitness center, yes, sir.
it's the fitness center parking. So if we ever have a request to change the usage of the building, then that would have to be looked at again. Is that right?
I believe the requirement is stricter than regular retail,
Oh, it is?
yes.
Okay, so you could easily change the use of the building
Yes, sir.
to something retail, and you have plenty of parking in.
Right, yes, sir.
Gotcha. That's, okay, that's good. Any other questions for staff? Does the applicant have any questions for staff? Is there any opposition here that have questions for staff? Okay, let's hear the evidence by applicant then.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. My name is David Fothergill, and I'm the counsel for the applicant. With me is Mark McCarn, the applicant, as well as John Frazier, the architect. At this point, the applicant doesn't have any evidence. He's happy to answer any questions from members of the board and staff. We would rely on the presentation by staff as well as the plans that have been previously submitted, but happy to have John Frazier here, the architect, answer any specific questions members of the board may have.
I'm sorry, what was your name? What was your name again?
Sure, it's David Fothergill. Sorry, this thing.
Hang on.
is a little muffled.
You said David Fotherdale?
It's Fothergill. It's Fothergill.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So the board have any questions? I think that you said the engineer was here and also the applicant. Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
Just for if it's a two-story versus a one-story, and
Sure. John Frazier with FLM Engineering, just a point of correction, civil engineer for the project. I'm a professional engineer licensed in North Carolina. Mark can probably speak to the building a little more clearly, but there is a mezzanine level that provides that second floor.
Okay.
Kind of like an overlook in there, so it's not an entire second floor.
okay.
And then to answer your question, Danny was correct about the retaining wall. That would usually be done by a geotechnical engineer, kind of as part of the building permit process.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for the engineer.
Okay.
If I may ask a question, I know Mark
Let's get
personally, so
away.
I'm sure he's done his soil studies and rock borings. Do you anticipate doing any blasting to make that pad ready?
I don't think I didn't open it, right?
I do not. I believe based on what we know of the site that we are not expecting to get into a lot of rock. We're already building it up. It slopes back down towards the stream. We're building it up, so we actually expect to have to import a little bit of dirt to make it work. So we're not expecting to get into a lot of rock out there.
That's amazing that you're not expecting that.
Well, we understand that the rock is out there, but based on the depths that we're aware of, we're not expecting to be that deep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I have a selfish reason for asking that question, being a partner of the Granite Falls Swimming Athletic Club next door and the depth of our pools. And we've seen how rock in other neighborhoods have shaken foundations as we look over at Carlton Point. Just want to make sure that in the event that there is any need for any blasting, that all neighboring property owners are made aware of it.
Absolutely.
Very good. Any other questions by the board to the applicant?
This is just for the site, right? It's just for the site plan, right? I mean, for the approval for, I'm sorry, not the site plan.
No, you can ask. You can ask.
I just have a question, and maybe a little premature, but when you construct, it's a construction question, so this may not be the time for it, right? Okay, so when you construct this building, sound-wise, because you're going to be right up against a residential neighborhood, are they going to be hearing the clinkety-clink that a lot of your neighbors are currently hearing? I mean, are there safeguards in that construction?
I'll let Mark speak to that in a minute, but as Danny pointed out, there's a significant existing vegetated buffer that's also going to remain that should help with that. And I know they've got some plans in place for how they address their noise at the facility as well.
My name is Mark McCarn. I'm the applicant. I'm at 403 North Cheatham Street, Franklinton. And we've, in our current location, we're in a multi-tenant, building. And we have had to adapt, and we've already started to change some of the things that we do. And so with the 100-foot riparian buffer, we're still going to keep these measures in place, but we know that we are, with that buffer, we're going to have a lot of noise abatement. I mean, we just don't anticipate really any of our stuff that's going on in this gym or even the outside area that's going to cause enough noise to rattle, to bother anybody. We had the folks behind us with H.H. Hunt. They had no concerns. They didn't even attend the community meeting. There are only going to be 2 homes that are going to be behind us. One is, of course, the current model home right now. So we just don't anticipate any issues. And we've already dealt with, like I said, neighboring tenants in our so we know how to keep things quiet enough to keep everybody happy.
And I say that not to be critical, I just wanted to mention that because you are in a building that, I'm going to, for lack of a better word, they have thin walls. What you all do in that space is loud, but I know at one time there were complaints that it's just loud all the time. But you're a gym and this is what you do, so I was just wondering what safeguards you have. But the space, I'm sure, will make a difference, the distance around the building.
Absolutely.
So that was it.
Can I do a follow-up? I think we talked about this in technical review committee too. We engaged in this conversation also. So you have an outdoor concrete fitness area. Is the intent to be a garage door opening into that, and will there be sound coming out in that, and will there be speakers outside, or will you keep the sound?
Absolutely no speakers outside.
Okay.
And we keep, we're not going to have any kind of loud music busting out of there. I mean, we do have music, but we're not going to have anything that's going to be, we think that's going to bother anybody.
Thank you for that. Any other questions for the applicant from the board? Thank you. Is there any opponents here to have questions for the applicant? Is there any evidence to be by the public in favor, or any evidence in public in opposition here? Okay. So I guess, you don't have a rebuttal. Any rebuttal? It's a chance to. All right. One last call to the board for staff or applicants, anyone, before we turn it over to make a decision. Any questions from any of the people here that's participated in the public hearing? Everybody good?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'll turn it over to the board to make a decision.
I make a motion to approve case SP 19-0.
I second.
Okay, we got a motion to approve and a second.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes. Oh, I hear a voice.
Hate to do this at this moment. The applicant has offered, potentially as a condition, the removal of the chance of outdoor speakers. It's been placed into evidence here, but it is not in a note in the plan.
Oh.
Oh, well, let's do that.
So before, as we're formulating a motion, that might be something to keep in mind. Also, the applicant has elected not to provide expert witnesses or separate evidence and is relying exclusively upon their application. That's their choice at their risk.
Gotcha.
Oh, I need to restate the motion and say all of that. Help me, David. Say that again.
Or a friendly amendment,
Yeah, do amendment.
the substitute motion.
Okay, so what am I doing? I'm confused.
Just same motion, except no speakers will be outside, I think.
Okay, then.
No speakers and no witnesses.
Oh, no,
No.
Just no speakers.
that's not part of the
Oh,
motion.
just no speakers.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve case SP 19-0 with the understanding that there will be no speakers outside.
And I second that.
Okay?
Electronic
good?
speakers. Electronic speakers.
I do have a question about the speaker part. So is that speakers that are brought out for like a casual event, or speakers that are out there when you're working out? Because I know CrossFit can be a party CrossFit. Sometimes you guys play great music out there. So I'm wondering, is this just like a temporary, or is this a physically built-in speaker that's pointing outdoors?
My understanding is there'll be no physical permanent speakers outside whatsoever.
Okay.
Currently, we've been at this 4.5 years, we've never had speakers out.
Oh, no, it wasn't your CrossFit. It was another one.
So
But that's okay. All right, I just wanted to be clear on that.
Okay?
We'll draft the motion and return it to you.
Gotcha.
Okay,
The motion, the order, I'm sorry.
gotcha.
Sounds good. So we got a motion, got a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Sounds like, Paul, was you aye? I didn't
Aye,
catch
yep.
you. Sounded like it was a 5-0, so appreciate it. Thank you. The motion passed. Thank you. I think we've been going for a couple hours here. I think we will take a 5-minute recess, if everybody's okay with that, and come back and finish the last 2 items on the agenda. So, thank you very much. No problem.
Sheila, you are too funny. The water. You're like my daughter's the same way.
Get water from.
Because I filled this up already with another one. I've got like little waters in my car, but I think they might be hot. Michaela's the same way. She's like, oh, can I just have that water, please? Is there anybody still over there? Sheila, you know, after I spoke to you, I tried to run to Walmart. Remember I said I was just got. Do you know they close at 5 o'clock? They said because the other one that was vandalized and they're closing early, they're like, we're closing early too because we don't want that nonsense down here. They close at 5 o'clock, so we tried to go to Aldi's. Aldi's closed. 5:06, they were closed. Aldi's was closed. They said we're following what they're doing. Yeah, so long story short, I had to go to Lidl's to get my ground turkey to fix dinner that I didn't get to eat because I was like, I gotta go. I can't be late. Well, we're only talking about food.
like it's winter. It's cold in here. I'm with you, Amy. I'm with you. Okay. I don't care. Thank you so much.
I'll take one anyway, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Thank goodness.
That's the downside of the legislative process.
I don't have cookies, but I'm just saying.
Thank you.
All standing. Everybody's got
We have to annex them before we make a decision. Oh, before we.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Dolores has already read me the riot act because, you know, she goes in for surgery and they want it on the 12th. For her other knee, and they are making her do a COVID test on Friday. This Friday, the week before.
All right.
All right, let's get her done.
Thank you.
Hold on to your knees. Hold on to your kneecaps.
Oh, man.
No, Rolesville High School for those graduates, Rolesville Middle School. You know, and just briefly, you know, all the schools, yes.
That'd be good.
For one
2020
day,
graduates.
each school gets it for one day. Well, maybe you can rotate it. Maybe you can rotate. I really want to put it.
I seriously, I counted in my subdivision.
Say again?
I counted my subdivision at 6 different high schools graduating.
Okay, so we're gonna put it on the high school. Only because it wouldn't be fair, because you'll be, you won't get any other information.
They're all the
on-
same. They all have, they're all Roseville students.
Yeah, but they're interested in outside of Roseville.
Ready?
Ready.
How would you do it? You didn't miss it.
I know.
I like this.
Roseville, you'd be safe. And as a parent specifically.
Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. The next item of business is public hearing for economic development expenditures. So I'll open the public hearing and take introduction from staff.
Thank you, Mayor and Board of Commissioners. North Carolina general statutes require a public hearing related to expenditures for economic development purposes. The proposed budget for fiscal year 2020-21 includes funding for just over $146,000 in economic development expenditures. These are primarily in there for business development and implementation of the Economic Development Strategic Plan.
Is that good? All right. Any comments from the public in favor? Any comments from the public opposed? Was there anybody signed up at all? I didn't see anybody.
Yes, they're not somebody.
Okay.
So you look.
I'll open it up for the board questions for. I'll open up for questions on the board for any questions to Amy.
You're looking for a motion to approve the economic development expenditures in the neighborhood of $146,000?
No motion needed at this time. Those expenditures are included as part of the budget.
Okay, okay.
Are they listed
Well,
somewhere?
so it's essentially, we're meeting statutory requirements with this public hearing.
Oh, just to state the amount.
Correct. Just because I think these statutes were written, for larger public-private partnerships, but they can be interpreted in a very broad way. And so just to meet our obligations, we do hold a separate public hearing just for these.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay, good. Any other questions? All right, I'll close the public hearing. And the next item is public hearing for fiscal year 2020, 2021 proposed budget. Open the public hearing and call on staff for introduction.
Thank you. This one will be a little bit more than the last one, an introduction. But since at your last meeting you did have a more detailed preview of what's in the budget, this one will be a little bit more at a high-level summary overview. So we're going to start by acknowledging that everything that was part of this budget proposal came right out of the strategic plan that you all adopted in March and began working on several months before that. That strategic plan was the guiding document and used to make those resource decisions for this proposed budget. As we go through this presentation, you'll see in these slides some little green circles, and those are to indicate where those budget items relate to this plan. The total proposed budget is shown here. First column shows you the current budget that we're in now, fiscal year 1920, and then the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021. So you can see general fund, which is the majority of the board's expenditures, has an increase of 10% over prior year. One thing I will note out about that increase is that $9.5 million for 2021 includes a planned use of fund balance in the amount of $500,000. And the intent there is to begin exploring and potentially purchasing some land associated with a public works facility. So that's use of fund balance or savings. If we were to pull that $500,000 out of that number, the increase from last year to this 2021 would be just over 4%. So something a little bit more in line with where you might be thinking about given our economic situation. So let's review briefly where the general fund revenues come from. This chart's a little bit different from the one in your budget. This looks at very specific line items for where these revenues come from. Property tax, 58% of revenue. Sales tax, 17%. Solid waste fees, 8%. And the franchise, now called the utility sales tax, is 5%. In the private sector, when you have economic disruptions, a lot of times you see those effects right away. If you have a small business, a store, or a restaurant, you notice right away the customers are not coming in. In local government, we have a lag before we start to see the impacts of economic disruption. So, for instance, the property tax, that's based on property values on January 1 of 2020, before any economic disruption occurred this year. We still expect some sort of effect in terms of collection rate, but we're not going to see any changes from potential decrease in development until later years. Property tax has a very long lag to it.
Can you say that again?
Mm-hmm.
Start with the lag part. I just want to repeat that.
Right. Local government has a lag compared to what private businesses would see in terms of their revenue from economic disruption. A private business is going to see right away fewer customers. For local government, it takes us a while until our revenues start to show that impact. And so that's part of the challenge we've had with how to budget for the revenues for this year, because we haven't had a lot of good experience yet with how it's going to affect things like sales tax. Mm-hmm. And so with sales tax, the sales that occurred in March of this year, we won't actually see how that affects our revenues until June, about the middle of June, is when we'll start to see the first impacts of what's been going on recently with consumer spending. So there's a lag. So we have a challenge this year in trying to predict when we have no data to work off of. But what we have done with this budget is taken a moderate approach. We're not gone with the catastrophic model of economic disruption, but we're not also going with business as usual. We're hoping that this is a short-lived event and that we can come out of it, and that Rolesville is in a good situation to be able to recover well from this situation. And expenditures, you can see that just over 40% of general fund expenditures go to public safety. Then there's about another quarter, 23%, that go to other direct service-based activities like parks and recreation, public works, solid waste. Another quarter, about 23%, go to your more office-based activities like finance or planning, administration. And then finally, we have special appropriations. And that piece of the pie is a little bit bigger this year than it was last year, that's special appropriations. And a big reason for that is that, as we mentioned, that $500,000 savings appropriation. We put that into special appropriations.
In that pie chart, most of that, Amy, is within each of those, except for special appropriations, obviously, is majority of that is salary. Is that an accurate statement?
That is true for most of it, with the exception of solid waste. Because that is a completely contracted out service. And then same thing with the fire department. That's just a transfer to the fire department. There's no salaries there for us.
If I remember correctly, 41% of our budget goes towards personnel this year.
Okay, so
That number was lower last year, right?
for
For salary. You said 41% this year. Was it lower last year?
I don't recall right off the top of my head. All right, so revenues. So let's take a little bit more look at the revenues. Property tax, our current property tax rate is 48 cents. This was a revaluation year for Wake County. So we are required to calculate the revenue neutral rate. What would revenues be had we not, what would we expect revenues to be had we not revalued property? And that revenue neutral rate is calculated at 44 cents. This proposed budget includes a tax rate of 46 cents for every $100 of valuation. That 2-cent difference between revenue neutral and the proposed rate represents two things. 1 cent is proposed to go towards a long-term capital savings that we have. We know we have a tremendous amount of capital needs coming up in the future. There's a lot of ideas, a lot of plans in this community for things that need to be built and expanded, and so that penny would go towards a savings to contribute for that future capital. The other penny is currently budgeted in something called contingency, which is also included in that special appropriations category. Now, contingency is a line item that's set out by North Carolina general statutes. It says how much you can put into a contingency line and puts some restrictions on who gets to approve how it's used. So a contingency line item can only be as high as 5% of all the appropriations in the fund. So I think for this general fund, I think I calculated it was over $400,000, but we're not looking at anywhere near that level, so we're within statutes for that in terms of how much we're proposing in contingency. The other piece of it is to use any of those funds in the contingency line item. That action must be approved by the governing board. So if any use of that funds is made during the year, that's going to come before you to decide how that's used. Some of the things you might want to think about using it for is, as we just talked, our revenues are a little uncertain this year, so we may come to you and suggest maybe we need to use it towards operating expenditures. Or something else could come up during the year that's of interest to you that you want to pursue, and you can approve the use of that for something new and unplanned that you hadn't predicted. If we get to the end of the year and we have not had a need to use those funds, you may also then want to consider adding that to that capital savings fund as an option. So we can address that more as we get further into the year and see what uses there may be for that contingency fund.
Just for clarification for the public, can you clarify when you say 1 cent? Because I know some people take that literally, what that equates to as far as the budget.
I believe that's about $123,000 per penny.
Thank you.
And then move on to fees and charges. So no significant changes to fees and charges, including our solid waste fee, remaining at $22 a month. Now here's where we see our first goal, green circle, number 13, which is your goal, talks about maintaining and increasing the town's financial strength. And so associated with that, one of the things we'll be doing this year, because there is so much uncertainty, is very closely monitoring this budget as we execute it. So we'll be having monthly reports to you about how revenues and expenditures are doing. Our plan is to hold back on some of our large expenditures in order to see how revenues are coming in, and then we'll make what we're calling the go, no-go decisions on where we move forward with. All right, so on the expenditure side, where are the funds going now? We'll look at those a little more closely. And the first big area to look at is technology and equipment. When you put a vision together, it's important to have a plan for how you're going to execute it. If you decide to paint your living room wall, you need to get paintbrushes, paint buckets, rollers, drop cloths. You can't execute your vision for what your living room is going to look like if you don't have the right tools to make that happen. And so that's kind of the same thing here. We don't really have a specific goal that orients to these things. This particular idea of technology and equipment supporting what we do really relates to that entire organizational excellence section of your strategic plan. Goal 5, increase efforts to improve the town's appearance. So there's things in this budget that will continue to do that. Expanding the wayfinding signage to our parks and our entranceways, as well as continuing our street sweeping program. Goal 11 is fostering your business community. And so we continue, as we just had that previous public hearing, we're continuing with economic development expenditures and our partnership with the Rolesville Chamber of Commerce. Goal 12 is developing a vision for land use for the community. So we'll be continuing with the Community Transportation Plan update and the UDO update. Projects that we're already working on and are in the middle of will continue into the next fiscal year in this proposed budget. On the capital side, Goal 9, implementing that Main Street Vision Plan, and work on that project will continue in this next fiscal year. No new appropriations are needed. There's sufficient appropriations from prior years. And so one of the items in your packet to consider with your budget adoption, whenever you're ready to do that, is to make those prior appropriations so that they will last throughout multiple fiscal years. Goal 8, about developing the community infrastructure. So there's proposals in here about a pedestrian project and some road widening on Rogers Road, our continued stormwater mapping, also discussed earlier tonight. Goal 6, expanding open space and recreation, reflected in our Parks Capital Program, getting some construction drawings for the farm facility, Phase 1, as well as the master plan for Millbridge Park. Goal 7 is growing public safety's future needs. And so a big project there is the police department expanding into the vacant unit next door. Getting more specifically into the employees and benefits, including in this proposal, there are 3 full-time positions proposed, as well as 1 part-time position. And these relate to your goal of 14, addressing organizational staffing needs. So this will start chipping away at the needs that we have out there. Specifically, Goal 15, which talks about prioritizing communication with the community, is addressed through the assistant to the town manager position, who will centralize the town's communications and orient that all into one person rather than having it decentralized throughout multiple staff.
So it's decentralized now,
That's correct.
so Parks and Rec does some communication, and then what is it? Who does it?
Some,
Town clerk?
some,
So it's several people?
yes. Yes, yes, yes. And then goal 16, recruiting and retaining outstanding personnel. One of the ways, among many others, but one of the ways you do that is through your pay and benefits. And so we started implementing the performance coaching program this month. After we have a few months of experience with that, we have proposed putting in a performance pay increase of 3% for employees, which would be effective in November. And this is within the range of what we're seeing in terms of percentages in our surrounding communities. We talked previously about new health insurance, and we are having to fund the accelerated retirement contribution. It's part of the state's pension system that all the employees participate in. Right now, employees contribute 6% of their salary into that pension system, and employers contribute 11%. And again, that's projected to go up again next year.
I have a question. In regards to the employee pay and benefits, now with the study that was conducted last year, I believe, are we still within that range of what the suggested pay was?
Right,
Or
so
are we, because I really felt we were still a little bit on the bottom tier of that, not necessarily on the higher end, or in the middle.
Right, so it was a year ago, it was about April of last year when we did that pay study. And your intention then was to catch up to everyone else and move a little ahead. And so that's where we placed our pay plan, to be a little bit ahead. And so by keeping up, that's why we've been monitoring what are the surrounding communities doing so that we can make sure that we're in line with what they're doing and that our pay plan stays competitive. Now, part of that pay plan, an important piece of that pay plan, is that we need to commit to doing updates to that on a regular basis, usually about every 3 years.
Okay, so with 3 years, as you're saying, it does seem like, well, let me ask you this. You're saying in the area, are you talking about Nightdale, Wake Forest, or are you talking about further away?
We primarily were looking here at the same group that we used in the pay study, which was our surrounding communities. The ones that where you go out your door who are within about an hour's drive.
Okay, I don't know, it seems like, okay, okay. It just seems like it's lower in compared to our neighbors when you look at some of the salaries here versus salaries in neighboring municipalities. And I guess I'm saying that because I just don't want that to be an issue moving forward where we lose people because of pay. People are always going to go for one reason or another, whether it's money-driven or promotion or what have you. But I just hope that we are, competitive enough with our neighboring communities. And I don't think we are when it comes to the police department. And I only say that based on the officers that left. You know, because it just seems like money was part of that exit. So, I don't know.
The plan applies across all of the departments.
Correct, I'm hoping.
Yes.
Hmm?
And we did find last year that in terms of police, so at least a year ago, we were competitive.
And I think if they hadn't left, I wouldn't have thought about it, but when they did go, I'm like, well,
Right.
why? Rolesville's wonderful.
Right.
You know, so.
They leave for pay? I thought they left for another reason. Did we?
Multiple reasons,
Multiple
but
reasons, and that was
also
one of them.
larger force and other responsibilities that they wanted to try.
It's more like a promotion type thing that they left for, is that?
They was-
I heard it, but I can't remember exactly what it was, but.
I don't think there's a given reason. There's typically a reason. We are competitive with the pay plan that we did last year is intact.
It is, you slotted it at or above our comparable communities that we attributed to. Why people leave are various reasons. I think these two may have left to go be a part of the larger force, and there might have been an opportunity to be into a promotion, higher level position also as a result. But they never really stated outright why they were leaving to anybody, as far as we know.
We also have to base on town size too. I mean, we're 8,000 people compared to a 30,000 person place. I mean, you're gonna have a little bit of difference anyways there with salary, I feel like.
Well, I mean, but we did use larger communities in our, you did include even Raleigh and Cary and Wake Forest in that pay plan, so you gave credit to that.
Okay.
Again, but some individuals seek more breadth and scope in their position sometimes, which may mean they get more pay for that breadth and scope also. So that may be a reason why sometimes they leave.
You know, and I'm just going to say this, not even with the two that left, but for people who have left throughout the years. Again, money may not have been the main factor, but it was, I would say, up in the top 2 to 3. And I say that because I'm still friends with some of the ones who have left, you know, and that was a consideration. And I get that we're smaller, but still, I just, and even for staff, I just would like to make sure that they're all taken care of, and nobody leaves. Not, at least not for financial reasons. So I say that.
The only one I know is giving higher than 3% this year is Italy. They're doing 4.
Really?
Everybody else is doing 0 to 2 to 3.
How do you do 0?
No pay increase.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you meant like individually. I'm like,
Right.
not get a raise. Okay,
Well, we
gotcha.
also talked about that too. I mean, like Amy said earlier, we don't know what we're gonna look like later in the year, so things could change. when This is proposed.
It's all good.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure thing. So that's it. Quick. I told you it was gonna be a little quick.
That was it?
High level.
Do you need a motion now to approve this, or was this?
No, not yet. I guess, be official, there is no public comments here, no comments in favor or not from the opposition from the public, so we can move on for that. Any questions for Amy before I close the public hearing?
I do have a question about staffing. So Kelly had sent us information on the assistant to the town manager position, and I think I stated in the last meeting, I wasn't familiar with that. He was saying it's very common. Well, he sent us some additional information, and I researched the towns that he sent, in addition to some other towns. And not only is it common, we are.
Sheila, is your mic on?
Is my wife, can y'all hear me? Sorry. Sorry. So, I don't know how much of that, was any of that heard? Anyway, I was just going to say that Kelly had talked about an assistant to the town manager position the last meeting. And I had stated that I wasn't familiar with that, and he shared some more information, including some towns that have an assistant to the town manager. So I researched those towns in addition to some other ones. And really what I'm finding is we got a lot of gaps. And I know that we had up there some positions that we need. So I know that we need the assistant town manager. But what I also want us to consider is looking at the towns as far as towns our size. Specifically, I looked at Dunn, Wendell, which you had on the list, Butner, Hillsborough, just to mention a few. Tarboro is another one that's close to us in size because they've got us at like 9,400, and I guess that's based on estimated census results. And we are really lacking when it comes to staffing. So I really want us to really think about a staffing plan. I know Kelly has mentioned that. Y'all heard me beat the tables about staffing and a staffing plan. I really think we need a staffing plan. So I know Kelly is going to bring that forward, but I really want to have something in front of us. And I'd like to have, I don't know if it's possible, I'd love to have something, at least a estimated amount, and include that in the budget if we can. I don't know if that's even feasible.
So, if I may, Well, so today we had our first, we've identified 2 groups that we are engaging and talking about that possibility. And we have a conversation, one more specifically Monday, North Carolina State. And then we also have identified Novak and Associates, who has, they are a nationwide consulting group, but they have an individual who does organizational assessments and lives in Durham. She's actually married to the Durham deputy town manager, which is interesting. And I had a conversation with her today, and the range she gave me for funds for a survey of our size was very high, in my opinion. That doesn't mean that may be the same range we get for something else, but it depends, I think, on the breadth and scope we do. I think it's going to be anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000. It depends on what the scope is. If we want to have every employee do a job inventory like we did, but we already did that before. So there might be ways we can reduce this a little bit.
Some of the costs.
But I do hear that one of the things you, and I want to bring this as we move, whoever is selected, will get in front of you so you can hear kind of your perspective as an organization, because there's a lot more history here to some extent. Then they will go out, do the analysis, which includes looking at not only current levels, our growth levels, and then our contractors. And what they'll do is kind of look at potentially gaps existing currently. They will look at then how to fill those gaps incrementally over time. But the other part of this that's just as important for all you is how they relate to the finances, right? To try and come up with some realistic picture of growth plus financing. So that's what a organizational assessment will look like, and it'll kind of identify then when do you potentially cross thresholds of creating different departments maybe, and or divisions, and or starting to bring some of your contractors in-house. That may or may not happen in the next 5 years, depends on that assessment. So we have envisioned that we probably would not do this for the police, the planning department, since they just had that study last year, but probably all of the other rest organizations would be part of this assessment. So tonight, if you were to ask me what you'd want to add to the budget to do that, I would give that range. I don't have a better number than that right now for that kind of assessment.
I just don't want it to get lost in the
Yeah.
shuffle. I think it's important, and I think we've held off on staff
So
entirely too long.
we could do one or two things with what you presented just a minute ago. We could come back with a proposal, and that could be, quite frankly, your first conversation for use of contingency. Or we could go ahead and amend the budget, or when you adopt the budget, whenever you adopt the budget, you could add some funds for that, very specifically to the budget. But again, I don't have a very good hard figure for that price right now.
I would wait and do a budget amendment because you don't have a hard figure yet.
I think that might be best, because then you can, at least you all get to see the proposal, you can understand it, and you can agree with it.
Yes.
And then you would agree with the pricing. If you want to spend that kind of funds, whatever that proposal has, to get it started. And that might be a better than just putting a number in there right now. But I do hear that there's interest, and so that would be probably coming to you very shortly.
Very shortly. Great. Good. One other thing, and then I'll move on and let others speak. So in my assessment of the different towns, and I literally have 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a lot, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 towns that I looked at. You had sent, I think, 8 or 9 or 10. So I added a few, including like Nightdale and others that are around us and some that are farther out, but I was trying to get ones that were comparable to our size. When I look at not only the wholes, but when I look at the reporting relationships, I'm concerned. And part of this concern comes from a person that's worked in HR. HR should be a standalone entity that either reports directly to a CEO, or at least this is what I've seen in my experience in many companies that I worked for. Because HR is kind of that accountability arm for the organization. So my concern is with us having an HR analyst, which I'm not real clear on what an analyst does other than data and reports, reporting to finance, that could create some problems if you have an issue with employees that fall under finance or any other department that it reported to. So I really would like us to consider that relationship reporting directly to, I know you probably don't want another direct report, and possibly a reclass. Because we have an economic development manager that reports to you. To me, HR needs to be an independent arm from any other department. And that's what I've seen in my experience. And maybe that can go into that process of staffing and researching that. But I do think that that makes more sense, and it gives the employees more of a voice in the event that something happens. And I would hate to see this lead to something down the road, an employee left, and I was in a situation and I had to go through,
I think that's a very fair assessment. I don't know if I'm ready to respond affirmatively to that tonight, but as Amy knows, I'm involved pretty closely in all HR items. So there is pretty close proximity to that, and I think that would be a transition that could occur fairly quickly. I do think it makes some sense to go ahead and include this assessment, because again, it gets to how many, the breadth and scope responsibility. And that may mean that we need to beef up that department further down the line pretty quickly. So, yeah.
that's all I have really.
So you said you couldn't
for
answer
now.
that tonight, but you would be answering that when?
I would like to wait on that for as part of the assessment, quite frankly. Or
But when is that, though? There's no time frame on that.
is it?
He said pretty quickly.
I know, but it's pretty quickly, and when's the
But
assessment?
I guess my question is, is there an urgency on your behalf?
I just don't like things to get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
And as
I
much
get-
as
I
we could
agree.
get as close to this
Right.
budget amendment, if we had to do an amendment versus it going into
Right.
2021 and we're
Right.
still having that
Right.
conversation. And I know I've talked about staffing for a long time now. You
If
may not know,
if
though.
there is a perceived urgency on your behalf, we can make that change. I'm not
Yeah,
certain.
well, you're already interviewing for a consultant, right? You said?
We're starting that process, yes.
Yeah. So, you won't know in the next 2 weeks a good number that you could come up with?
Yes.
You think you could?
We could have some idea
I'm gonna have an idea.
by next meeting.
I would offer as a suggestion would be to line item, that's whatever that number is that you guys are suggesting, and kind of reduce the contingency by that amount. And then that will be, in the budget for next year. You like that suggestion at work?
It's totally your comfort level. If you want to put, I'll just throw $20,000 into.
I think that's y'all decide what.
Yeah, again, I think we need to find out what the number is,
Right,
and just,
get an
and just do
idea.
an amendment to the budget.
So you don't have to do it twice.
Yeah,
I would-
there you go.
If this does help you any, usually at the first meeting in the fiscal year, we have a budget amendment that we do on the new, it's ridiculous, but we do an amendment the very first meeting because there are some projects in the prior year that don't finish and we reappropriate those funds. So we're already doing an amendment at that very first meeting in July, if that helps you
Gotcha.
in any way,
That helps.
decide what direction you want to go.
That helps.
Okay.
I unfortunately have two quick ones. Sorry. The first one is stormwater management. We've gone through phase 1 of that, I believe.
Mapping.
We had somebody tonight come in and talk about stormwater management. I've got repeated emails regarding stormwater management. What would it take? We have $30,000 in the budget this year for that. What would it take to finalize that study and just be done with it so we could go to the next step? I don't need an answer tonight, just.
No,
just
no,
an
we
idea.
have it, we have it.
Okay.
It's in the capital plan. And I like your thinking. I would love to be able to get it accomplished sooner. We just did not, we did it more incrementally.
Okay.
Because of the pricing, but is there a price on that over 4 years?
If you have your proposed budget, it's on page 44.
Oh, I love page numbers. Thank you, Amy.
It shows year 1 is 30,000, year 2 70,000, and year 3 75, for a total of 175 over the next 3 years.
So and if you don't mind, I could bring in JG just to refresh my memory. Would that be appropriate if we could bring in JG? He's pretty intimately knowledgeable for this number. Would that be okay if we could do it? Stormwater, 3 years. All that's mapping? That's what they're speaking for price.
All mapping, huh?
It's all mapping. I think we broke it into 3 stages for the mapping, 3 years to reduce costs. And then after that, then you go into the maintenance program and get your whole stormwater management program in place.
Okay.
So, and the key to that is getting enough information to develop the program, as JG said, which will then be another analysis of how do you fund that, and what's it going to take equipment-wise, staffing-wise, because that will be a real public works deliverable maintenance ongoing project. So the intent is to gain enough knowledge by your mapping to make the determination what is a public versus private systems, what are the issues that need to be resolved to potentially reconstruct and to maintain. So there's 2 pieces to that.
Okay.
And I'm just here to tell you most communities in North Carolina, in this region, typically are not able to afford that within the general tax base. So there is the ability to do a stormwater fee associated with that. So that'd be part 1 of the analysis, is how you're going to maintain the system and reconstruct that's needed. Because what you heard tonight, as Commissioner Wilson said, is there are some deficient systems in our community that will probably take some reconstruct also. So that if you want to expedite that, you would want to put some extra money in so we can start getting those questions and start getting fairly aggressive on that issue. Our running joke last week was we just had our 2nd year or maybe 3rd year in a row of a 25-year to 50-year rain event. Right. And that's the new norm, in my opinion. So if we have built insufficient over time, plus we're speccing 25-year stormwater systems now, and they don't have the capacity, we need to get on this issue pretty quickly. And so you're hearing that more and more, you're seeing those results. So we would love to see that expedited moving along. We're just being cognizant of the pricing.
Right.
Yeah, I think, the long-term thinking on that is probably good, and it needs to happen because there is some that's probably old and need to be replaced. But kind of what I heard Charles say, and, I think his problem was not anything other than we need to maintain it. And maybe that's the answer, Paul, is do we have enough money for JG to keep them clean? Because I know Charles was cleaned out last time.
Yeah.
And, he was out there this storm cleaning it out himself. So we know in 12 months it probably needs to be redone each year. So maybe that's the answer is do we need to fund more for keeping the storm drains clean,
Like even a separate line item for that.
For interim, that's certainly a solution. Yep. And that would be more.
I don't know, when was that big storm?
May 22nd last year, right? May 11th, May 22nd. I got it off the top of my head.
13 months.
So it was just a year, okay.
I still got blisters from working that one.
And I believe he has, majority of his neighborhood is just ditches, right?
Yeah.
The stormwater system is actually on Young Street itself, and those storm drains have been cleaned. getting the street sweeper has helped us tremendously, keeping those storm drains clean and flowing. As Kelly said earlier in the meeting, we're addressing the issues as we can and get there. Virginia Water Drive, we had no flooding this time with the same amount of rain in that period of time. And so that we did get that one corrected, and we're working on the other ones as we can, as we get to them when we see them. And the mapping has helped us with that already. We've seen where there's some trouble issues, and we went out and if there are minor repairs that we can do in-house, we've done those.
But it does take a schedule. I mean, it's a schedule.
How many of them are there?
What's that?
How many of those drains are there?
In town?
Yeah, do you know?
Oh.
Sometimes you find them when they back up, right? You don't even know they exist until that. That's what it seems like. I'm not saying to be critical. I'm just saying that's what happens sometimes,
Right.
right? Like, damn, another one.
Right.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to Band-Aid it, but I just want to make sure we're addressing those. Like, if we have a concern come up, that we go and, make sure we have maintenance money for that to fix
Right.
this spot or that spot, this culvert or that culvert, in the meantime. That was the main concern with that one. The other one is, I'll say ahead of time, I know government moves slow, but the farm. We have $180,000 in there this year for 30% engineering. Can we say 3 months from now, we'll have 30% done and we need to move on? I mean, I just don't want to drag this thing out for 5 more years. So what kind of funding do we need, or what kind of plan do we need for next steps after the 30% engineering?
JG, step in if I go astray a little bit on this, but so 30% is the design level that is allows us to make funding decisions on how we're going to build it out, what phases we're going to build it out.
Okay.
And 30% is also your level that gives assurances to grants that you have done some due diligence, that within proximity. So for instance, on Main Street and Burlington Mills for the LAP grant, we designed that to 30%. That then was able to identify, we hope, a good number for that project, that we went to the grant groups and LAP Campo and said, here's what we think that cost is going to be, and here's why. So when we get to that 30%, we're going to be able to be, hopefully if there's funds, eligible much more so for grants. So the bag, one of the conversations we got to have pretty quickly, and I want to throw this to the Parks and Rec Board, is what's the bag that we're going to use to build the farm?
Right.
And it's going to be, there's going to be parts grants in there. There's going to be parts of what funds. That's part of your plan. It says there's opportunity how to do that. But pretty soon we got to start being strategic how we identify those and put days, years on those, and then what are the checklists that get to those. So, for instance, if we're going for a grant in the end of middle of 2021, there's a grant cycle coming forward. We want to make sure the 30% design is done well in advance of that date.
Okay.
To make sure we got grant eligibility. If you are wanting to fund in next year's budget some elements of the farm out of your park fund, you need a good design 30%. Going from 0 to 100, there's not a whole lot of logic until you get to that 30%. Then you're going to have a good idea. Then you're going to have a very concerted conversation strategically. What is the dollar amount, and how are you going to fund it? And you can jump to 30 to 100% pretty quickly. Right? We're testing that right now with the LAP grant, but that's what I've been told. And that jump. The hard work's in that 30%. But going from 30 to 100, you're just kind of refining, getting the new numbers, finalizing it. So the key is really getting that 30%.
Okay.
And the key how fast you want to do it is how fast are your funding resources going to be available. And if they're 2 years out, well, you got some time.
Right.
If they're a year out, we need to move it along. And I think we intend to move it along. I mean, so that's why we have it in here that it would be early 2020 project in this fiscal year, it's not on that go, no-go, because it's going to be funded out of the park fund, which has the ability to fund this phasing and design. So therefore, that's why we have it kind of uploaded to get started early.
Okay.
So when do you expect to have the 30% complete?
I need to get with McAdams or if we do an RFQ, if we want to go outside of what McAdams has done. So we got to really just see what their time frame is on that. You know, we have a cost estimate of what we think that's going to cost for the budget purposes. But for the time frame, we didn't get that question because we knew we realistically probably had that year to get it completed. And to kind of piggyback off what Kelly was saying, you don't want to go to that 100% unless you're ready, because what if standards change? You have to go back and redesign and spend more money on the design because you're not ready to do it. You know, if you're going to sit on the shelf for 5 years because you don't have the funding, you have to go back and spend even more money again on that last 30 or 60%.
But I do want to be real. I want to be realistic. 6 to 9 months.
What do you need to apply for grants? You need the 30%
Yeah.
to apply for grants. So we can't really do anything for, ask for grants, anything until we get to 30%.
That's right. They'll look at you. They'll look at you and say, "What's your number?" We have kind of a cost estimate, and they will say, "Well, that's not. There's not enough to it." The design will help us get to that better number.
And see, I was under the impression the master plan was getting us to that. So now we're going to the 30% plan is getting us to that. So like the 30% is going to get us to where we can apply for grants, and we're ready for all that.
Yes, I think that's. I mean, we're going to have a lot better answers. We're going to score higher.
Okay.
We're going to have the ability to go out and make a better case to whomever. That here's our solid numbers that we know are behind this.
Okay.
The master plan are numbers, but they haven't got into any of the engineering or anything like that yet, Paul.
Okay.
So,
But we needed that master plan to take that first step.
yes.
Right, so there was a need for it.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
Just
Yeah.
not to this point where you're talking about.
I just don't want it to sit. That's the biggest thing. I don't, when we get to the point, I know, but when we get to the point where, if we can have a timeline of where we're looking, like you said, if we know we're gonna have to apply for all this stuff, then we need to know. It would be nice to have a timeline just to kind of roll that through, and not necessarily monetarily wise that we'll need to know. I mean,
Right.
like you said, you're gonna get to this covers the 30%, so we're okay there. But just whatever we need for the next step.
So can we have that? Can we have a little bit of that conversation in 2 weeks when you bring the master plan in, and you and Rachel be prepared to talk about that a little bit?
I think that's all I had.
I said I was done with staffing, but JG made me think of another question. Thanks, JG. He said about the stormwater conversation, he said, as we can, and that just brings me back to staffing again.
Yeah.
We got to get where we can be proactive.
Right. Well, and so it's a mix, right? We have a need for, just as early as 2 years ago, when I started, I would call our effort, and it was fine for what we needed, a parks and right-of-way maintenance effort, generally. It's so much more than that. It's streets, stormwater, and it takes equipment, it takes facility, and it takes people. And that's part of, absolutely, we need to study that. And I suspect that Public Works will be a big part of that study that says, you're a growing community, and here's your gaps, as you described it, and that includes this type of level of staffing.
Certainly. I was really concerned tonight when Mr. Charles gave his statements, and he stated that he had had a procedure and was out there. So staffing can't wait. I'll just leave it there.
Well, he was out there, JG was driving, I had him drive over there just to make sure to see how Charles was doing. And you did see him, but it didn't appear he was doing.
He in his way for out there, I believe, because I saw them as well.
But our 4 that we had, were all on the on the street that was closed, dealing with that issue and reopening it that night. And then we moved over to the other street as a pipe busted out on there, and we were out there till 9 o'clock last.
We loaded up at 9 o'clock.
That was with a staff of 4.
Okay. Additional questions for staff or?
I just have one question. The future land parkland, 500,000 for future parkland.
Yeah.
What is that? What's the deal with?
Yeah, so that is,
It was last year, right, that came up?
it did, yes, and I think it was before your time. But what we have identified is over the next 5 years, kind of some money identified for buying a park site, potentially, a future park site. It does not include developing a park site. So in our master plan, our parks master plan, there is identified needs of park sites that have been identified in the park master plan. And so we have taken that and said, okay, we need to start identifying potential land available that we could purchase potentially, and then develop sometime in the future as these funds build into a park site that's called out in the master plan. So, for instance, our focus initially is down on Young Street. There is two new large developments being proposed in there, and we think that we need to look at that as a place that we may have to quickly get some land for a future park site to serve that new kind of growth in that side of the community. So it really is just a kind of, for lack of a better word, I hate this word, but I have to call it because I don't have any other word, placeholder. But if we find the opportunity, we'll come to you, we'll talk to you about it, see if it makes some sense. But it has some land, it has some funds set aside to purchase land as we see those needs or opportunities come up for a future park site.
And those are restricted funds, right? That can only be used?
The park fees have to be used for purchasing the land, for recreation purposes. They come from the impact fees of growth, so they are part of the growth of the community. So each household that comes in, is built, pays that fee, and it goes towards a future park improvement of some sort.
Okay, good discussions. I'm glad we had this opportunity. I'm gonna, if it's not anything else, I'm gonna close the public hearing. Is that good? I have closed the public hearing. I have had a request to not consider the adoption of the budget tonight to give, since we sat here and talked about some things and some new stuff, that would give everybody a chance to digest it. So, I guess in respect for that commissioner that's requesting that, I'm not going to call for a vote on the budget night. So can we plan to have that in the agenda for the next meeting? And hopefully, I suggest any commissioner that has any additional questions to meet with Amy and meet with Kelly, between now and 2 weeks from now, and get everything ironed out so we can. I don't think we'll have, the public hearing. I close the public hearing, so we won't do that again. But, any brief questions you have, we can address it then. But let's be prepared to vote on all four of these items that we have to consider here. They were the last four things in the presentation, so just read over those and make sure you understand all four of those resolutions and adoptions that are being asked. They're ordinance, a couple of them are ordinances. So be prepared to vote on it. Hopefully next meeting we make it very quick and get it over with. So any closing comments? If not, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right,
Looking right at him, right?
I got a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a second on it.
Yes, we do.
Third.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are in adjournment. A little bit late. I was shooting for 10 o'clock. So
What time is it?
10.
Pajamas were coming out.